Chapter 72. A cultivator died on the spot. Due to how sudden this happened, the hundreds of Yutzang sect disciples below Little Wave Mountain were all dazed. Zhang Yan raised his head and saw a beast cultivator about 3 yards tall standing in the air. He had a protruding chin, wide cheeks, and a pointy head. His skin was pitch black, and he was covered in golden armor. He held a long saber that was 6 feet long and had the face of a beast in his hands. The demon looked left and right, and when he saw the golden dragon, a hint of joy appeared in his bell-like eyes. He let out a strange laugh and rushed toward the golden dragon. There were dozens of strong men around the golden flood dragon. Seeing this, they shouted and surrounded the golden flood dragon. Who would have thought that this demonic cultivator would recklessly charge over? Everywhere it passed, an irresistible force would come, and several strong men in front of it were actually directly sent flying by it. The strong men on the side tried to stop him, but he pushed them away and slapped them away like dolls. Luo Xiao, who was in Zhang Yan's sleeve, exclaimed, "It's this person." Zhang Yan raised his sleeve and asked in a low voice, "Does Dao friend Luo know this beast?" Luo Xiao's voice came from his sleeve. "This person is called Chu Chang, and he's the son of Uncle Chu of the 9-Tune Stream Palace." "Why would he come here?" Zhang Yan frowned. 9-Tune Stream Palace? Wasn't it already taken down by Sui Hong? Even if there were any that escaped, they would have gone into hiding already. Why would this person appear here? He faintly felt that it wasn't a coincidence that the golden serpent and this person appeared here together. At this moment, Chu Chang had arrived in front of the golden serpent and was pulling at the Yuan Yang golden chains. Once the chains were opened, the Yao serpent would be able to escape. Xie Zongyuan pointed at Chu Chang and yelled, "Left and right, capture this beast." This Chu Chang was only at the Mystic Light Realm, and he had 4 Mystic Light Realm cultivators with him. He was obviously not afraid and was very confident. These Mystic Light Realm cultivators wanted to attack a long time ago, but they were here to protect Xie Zongyuan, so they didn't dare to act without orders. Hearing this, one of them immediately stepped forward and said coldly, "Kill." A flying sword appeared in his hand and slashed toward Chu Chang. Chu Chang's hand was just about to touch the Yuan Yang gold lock when he suddenly felt something strange behind him. Turning his head, he stretched out his hand and unexpectedly caught the flying sword in his hand. Staring at the buzzing flying sword in his hand, he let out a "hey" sound and exerted his strength. "Kacha" sound was heard as he broke the flying sword. A cultivator standing to the right of Xie Zongyuan harumphed and charged forward. He released a flash of light, and a blue light swept toward Chu Chang like a fan. A sinister grin appeared on Chu Chang's face. Instead of dodging, he charged head-on. When the two of them were about to collide, he suddenly raised the beast-faced saber in his hand and slashed down. Puchi! Not only did this strike split open the blue saber, but it also split the cultivator in half. For a moment, a rain of blood fluttered in the air, and even his origin spirit dissipated. The Qian Tian, Chen, and the cultivator Chang's, and Chang, Shen Chang, Long, He Dragon Dao, He. Dodge. Use your flying swords and Dharma treasures. Divine weapons were the general term for the weapons used by cultivators, and they were divided into 3 grades, human, earth, and heaven. All of these weapons were forged by cultivators with profound cultivations using treasures of the heavens and the earth. Not only were they capable of resisting magic treasures, they were also useful in breaking through the profound qi that protected a cultivator's body. The remaining 3 Mystic Light Realm cultivators didn't dare to go forward when they saw how fierce Chu Chang was. They formed hand seals and Dharma treasures, and flying swords flew toward Chu Chang from dozens of yards away. Chu Chang brandished the beast-faced broadsword in his hand and parried 2 flying swords from left and right. However, he couldn't dodge the last one in time and it chopped at his head. There was only a dang sound as if he had chopped at gold and iron. It only left a white mark. He shook his head, but nothing happened. However, he seemed to be angered by this sword. He ignored the golden serpent and charged towards Xie Zongyuan. Seeing this, Zhang Yan couldn't help but ask, fellow Taoist Luo, does this monster walk the Tao of strength? Is he not afraid of flying swords? Luo Xiao spoke from his sleeves, that's right. Chu Chang should have reached the third level of the mystic light realm, and his mystic light essence has merged with his body. His entire body is as tough as steel, and normal flying swords and Dharma treasures can't harm him. Mystic light was also known as the essence of Qi. After Ming Qi, if there were no external objects such as cloud and sand as sustenance to condense light and form, it would seep into the bones and blood, fusing with the body and walking on the path of strength. Most Yao cultivators didn't have any secret Taoist books, and their progress in the Tao of Qi wasn't as good as human cultivators. However, after reading the Vital Life Golden Fruit book, Zhang Yan knew that the Tao of Strength wasn't as simple as it seemed, especially the Tao of Strength. Not only did it focus on mystic art, it also needed the essence blood of the corpses of great ancient monsters. The external things it needed weren't any less than the Tao of Qi. Therefore, normal Yao cultivators without any foundation had no choice but to walk this path. Seeing Chu Chang charge over aggressively, Xie Zongyuan didn't panic at all. He took out a small green tablet from his sleeves and said, "Go." This small tablet paused in the air and became a huge object that was 30 feet wide, pressing down on Chu Chang's head. In an instant, there seemed to be a strange power covering him. Chu Chang was originally very fast, but after being covered by this huge tablet, he actually fell from the sky. After barely getting up, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't move. He swayed as if he was stuck in a swamp. The top of his head suddenly darkened, and the huge tablet suddenly smashed down. Chu Chang shouted and raised the blade with both hands to block it. After a loud sound, he actually managed to block it. However, he seemed to be unable to bear the huge force and his body was slowly being pressed down. Feng Ming, who was watching the battle from above, said in shock, "Senior brother Feng, what kind of treasure is this? How is it so powerful?" Feng Zhen snorted and said, "This treasure is called the Sea-Suppressing Tablet, it is a spirit artifact. However, Xie Zongyuan is only at the second level of light qi, so he can't use 10% of this treasure's power. Otherwise, this Yao cultivator would have been smashed to death already. How would he have any chance to struggle?" Seeing that Chu Chang seemed to be unable to hold on, Xie Zongyuan smiled faintly and silently formed a spell. The huge tablet slowly shrunk, but its power didn't seem to weaken at all. Chu Chang still couldn't move. When it was only a foot long, he took out a shining short blade from his sleeve. With one look, it was obvious that it was not an ordinary item. He handed it to a Xian Light Realm cultivator beside him and said, "You go and finish him." The cultivator bowed and took it, walking step by step towards Chu Chang. Seeing that the latter was panting like a bull, but still couldn't break free from the suppression of the tablet, the cultivator sneered and took a step forward, stabbing down with the blade. The disciples in front of the mountain thought that this blade would be able to kill this fierce Yao cultivator, but who knew that there would be a sudden change? Chu Chang raised his head with a ferocious smile on his face. He actually grabbed the cultivator's arm, and with a wave of his other hand, the back of the beast-faced blade slammed down. With a "pa" sound, the person's head was instantly smashed open, and red and white matter splattered everywhere. Xie Zongyuan said in shock, "How can this be?" Chu Chang stood up again, shook his head, and stared at Xie Zongyuan with a ferocious gaze. He didn't seem to be affected by the sea-suppressing tablet at all. Although the sea-suppressing tablet was still floating in the air, it gave off a whining sound. Looking closely, it was a small talisman that was under the tablet. Not only did it not descend, it seemed to be fixed there. At this moment, there were only two profound light realm cultivators left besides Xie Zongyuan. Seeing Chu Chang walk over with a ferocious smile, one of them shouted, "Fourth brother, leave quickly. We'll cover you." Xie Zongyuan's face was slightly pale, but he didn't run away. Instead, he stood firmly on the spot, and a ferocious light flashed in his eyes. He turned to look at the sky and clasped his hands, "Senior brother Feng, I know you have a treasure. Please come with me to kill this Yao, and my Xia clan will reward you greatly. Fang Zhen, Feng Ming, and the others originally wanted to watch a show, and they were happy to see Xie Zongyuan's group in such a sorry state. However, seeing how powerful Chu Cheng was, they all felt that something was wrong and wanted to retreat. Seeing Xie Zongyuan asking for help, Fang Zhen snorted coldly and ignored him. He waved the talisman in his hand and turned to leave. Zhang Yan's eyes flashed. This Fang Zhen seemed to have some status in the lineage of master and disciple. Even Feng Ming was respectful to him. However, did this person think that Zhang Yan didn't hear him plotting against him just now? It was better to trick him along the way. He controlled the flying boat and blocked Fang Zhen's path, saying, "Senior brother Fang, the enemy is right in front of us." "Where are you going?" Fang Zhen was startled and said angrily, "Zhang Yan, why are you blocking me?" Xie Zongyuan is a disciple of a powerful family. If he dies, then he dies. Why are you sticking your nose into other people's business? Zhang Yan said with a serious expression, "Senior brother Fang is wrong. I'm not blocking you because of Xie Zongyuan." He pointed down and said loudly, "Look, the hundreds of disciples down there are all from the same sect. They don't have flying boats, and they can't fly. If you leave and Xie Zongyuan dies, this Yao will go crazy. Won't these disciples be at his mercy then? Although this Yao is only at the mystic light realm, I heard that you have a treasure. We might not be able to defeat him even if we work together. Why don't we go up and kill him together?" Zhang Yan's words were reasonable. Fang Zhen's face twitched, and he said reluctantly, "This Yao is very strong. We need to go back and report to the sect before we make a decision." With that, he controlled his flying boat and dodged Zhang Yan's flying boat. He turned around and ran. Feng Ming looked at Zhang Yan with a complicated gaze. He had been persuaded by Zhang Yan's words, but he knew that he couldn't do anything by himself, so he remained silent. Zhang Yan smiled faintly and looked at Fang Zhen's back. He said loudly, "Fang Zhen, you are the disciple of Daoist Yan of Glimmering Land, but you're actually running away. What do you think about the lives of your fellow sect members? What do you think about the prestige of your master? Do you have any face? Do you know shame? What use does the sect have for you? I, Zhang Yan, am ashamed to be associated with you." His voice rumbled and spread in all directions. The hundreds of disciples below all heard it clearly, and they all had strange expressions. Fang Zhen's face turned red from being scolded by Zhang Yan. He couldn't even raise his head, and he wanted to vomit blood in his heart. Feng Ming's face was also red, and he felt guilty. He hesitated and said, "Senior brother, why don't we?" Fang Zhen scolded, "Pa, if Zhang Yan wants to die, he can go. Do you want to go as well?" "That's right, I have a treasure, but I'm not willing to help them." "So what?" Chapter 73. Seeing Fang Zhen leave, Xie Zongyuan scoffed coldly with disdain written all over his face. He waved his hand and a white light flew out of his sleeve, heading straight for the Yutsang sect. He then turned to look at Zhang Yan and clasped his hands at him, saying, "Thank you, senior brother. However, this monster can't be subdued by treasures. Staying here will only harm your life, so it's best if you leave as soon as possible." Zhang Yan looked to the front and saw that the two profound light realm cultivators were struggling under Chu Chang's beast-faced saber. They seemed to be unable to hold on anymore, so he said, "Senior brother Xie, if you leave now, there's still a chance." Xie Zongyuan smiled softly and said, "As a disciple of the Yushuan Xie clan, how can I run from the enemy like Fang Zhen? If I die here today, there will naturally be people who will take revenge for me, and the family's name will not be tarnished. Senior brother, there's no need to say anything, just leave." Luo Xiao said softly, "Master, that Xie Zongyuan must have used a talisman to summon the experts of the clan just now. He already has something to rely on." Zhang Yan shook his head slightly and said, "Even if it's an expert, they probably won't be able to make it in time. This move won't be of much use right now. This Xie Zongyuan's courage isn't fake. He then turned to look at the trembling ocean-suppressing monument and said, "Fellow Taoist Luo, what kind of treasure do you think is stopping the ocean-suppressing monument?" Luo Xiao said, "Master, that ocean-suppressing monument is a high-class spirit treasure, not inferior to the soul-shaking inkstone. The thing that can stop it is probably a profound artifact." "Oh. Profound artifact?" Zhang Yan's eyes narrowed slightly. He had quite a few spirit treasures on him, but he had never seen a profound artifact before. He thought, "I can't miss this item, I need to think of a way to get it." Thinking about it, he had a plan. "I can see that Xie Zongyuan is a responsible person. Although he's panicking, he's not panicking. He's quite a character. The two of us will try to lure Chu Chang away and kill him. We'll take that profound artifact as doing this person a favor." The situation below became more and more dangerous. It seemed like Chu Chang's anger from being suppressed by the ocean-suppressing monument had not been released, and he still wasn't willing to let Xie Zongyuan go. One of the profound light realm cultivators couldn't dodge in time and had one arm cut off. Chu Chang then kicked, stepping on the person's chest. Even the layer of the cultivator couldn't stop. The cultivator's ribs cracked and he flew. The two already had it, and the cultivator was already in the Xian's chin. And of the last of the cultivator, Xian's the cultivated. And the cultivator's over, Xie's E of the Shan's the sect was Mo and Chu Chang waved his blade again and forced him back a few steps. He then walked forward and ignored the dozens of strong men in front of Xie Zongyuan. He charged in and created a storm of blood. Just as he cut through the last few strong men in front of Xie Zongyuan, a blue light suddenly flew toward his eyes. Chu Chang seemed to notice it and subconsciously turned his head. With a cut appeared on his forehead. Blood instantly flowed down and his vision became blurry. Chu Chang yelled and grabbed upward. Who would have thought that this blue light would turn around and escape from his palm? With a hissing sound, it tore open a shallow wound on his neck. Then it continued to spin in the air, aiming for his eyes. Chu Chang screamed again and again. He covered his face with his hands and retreated more than 10 steps. Only then was he able to avoid the attack. The blue light leaped into the air and flew back into Zhang Yan's hand. He couldn't help but nod. This sword pellet was indeed made from star essence sand. If it wasn't for the fact that his cultivation wasn't high enough, he wouldn't have to use any other Dharma treasures to kill the other on the spot. He wouldn't have only suffered some flesh wounds like now. Chu Chang wiped away the blood on his face and glared angrily at Zhang Yan. With a roar, he suddenly jumped into the air and charged at him with his blade. A gray light flashed, and the talisman was thrown away from the sea-suppressing monument and returned to his body. Zhang Yan smiled faintly and turned the flying boat to leave. He could tell that although Chu Yu was strong, his eyes were dull and his mind was not clear. He seemed to be acting on instinct, and flying was not his forte. He wasn't much faster than the flying boat. Since he was charging at him, he could lure him to a secluded place and take care of him with his Dharma treasure. With him luring Chu Yu away, the situation on Xie Zongyuan's side eased. He raised his hand and summoned back the sea-suppressing monument. With this treasure in hand, he couldn't help but calm down. The profound light realm cultivator hurried over and said, "Silang, since this person has lured the Yao cultivator away, there's no need for you to stay here. Why don't you leave?" Xie Zongyuan glared at him coldly and said, "I've already sent out a message talisman. Someone will rush over soon, so why should I be afraid of this Yao? Besides, that senior brother Zhang is risking his life for me, so how can I just abandon him? Do you think I'm someone like Fang Zhen? He was a disciple of the Xia clan. How could there be someone from the same clan who would run away just to help him escape danger? Wouldn't he be laughed at if word of this got out?" The cultivator saw the fierce look in his eyes and didn't dare to say anything else. He hurriedly retreated. On the other side, Zhang Yan fought and retreated at the same time. He would occasionally use the sword pellet to provoke Chu Chang in the air, luring him into the depths of the forest on Little Wave Mountain. Not long after, they arrived at a densely forested area. A black light flashed in his sleeve, and Luo Xiao came out to stand behind him. He looked around and said in a low voice, "Master, this is the perfect place to fight." Zhang Yan's eyes flashed. He nodded and gave the soul-shaking inkstone and life proclamation brush to Luo Xiao before descending the flying ship. Seeing this, Chu Chang also let out a howl and pounced down. Zhang Yan pointed forward, and the star's sword pellet flew up again. Chu Chang had suffered before, so he immediately raised a hand to protect his eyes. Zhang Yan smiled slightly, and a multicolored hammer slid into his hand. He then threw it into the air. Chu Chang's vision was blocked, and he was caught off guard. He only heard a boom in his ear as the hammer heavily smashed into his head. His vision turned black, and he fell straight down from the sky. After knocking down a few thick trees, he fell to the ground. Zhang Yan didn't let him off. He flicked his sleeve, and a green light went straight for Chu Chang's throat. The moment the divine Rui shuttle appeared, a sharp feeling could be felt, as if it wanted to devour a person's life. At this critical moment, Chu Chang's originally dull eyes regained some clarity, and he barely managed to raise his hand to block it. With a "chi" sound, the shuttle instantly sank into his thick arm. After going in a few inches, it couldn't go any further. Zhang Yan made a hand seal, and a rain of blood appeared. He then retrieved the shuttle, but he didn't chop off Chu Chang's arm as he had expected. He raised his eyebrows slightly. Using the divine Rui shuttle had always been successful, and this was the first time he had encountered such a situation. It seemed that with his cultivation, he still couldn't display the full power of the divine Rui shuttle. Chu Chang was injured repeatedly, and his head was dizzy. Just as he was about to get up, he suddenly felt an even more intense sense of danger coming from behind him. A cloud-patterned vermilion brush had silently appeared there, and he couldn't help but stiffen. At this moment, the talisman on his body suddenly leaped up, and took the initiative to block, stopping the descending brush in place. However, before he could catch his breath, Zhang Yan raised his hand again, and the hammer flew straight at him. Chu Chang roared and sat up, trying to raise his saber to block. However, because he was holding the saber with one hand, and he didn't have enough strength while sitting on the ground, the beast-faced saber was knocked away with a clang. With the divine weapon in his hand gone, Chu Chang was like a tiger without claws and teeth. How could Luo Xiao let go of this opportunity? He made a hand seal, and the soul-shaking inkstone in his hand flew up, falling towards Chu Chang. The sky darkened, and Chu Chang looked up to see a giant inkstone falling like a mountain. He shouted and pushed up with his hands, trying to block the inkstone with his arms. Seeing this, Zhang Yan couldn't help but shake his head. With a boom, the whole forest seemed to shake, and the leaves fell like rain. A cloud of dust rose, and Chu Chang didn't even make a sound before he was crushed into minced meat. With his death, the talisman lost its owner and suddenly flew up, as if it wanted to escape. Luo Xiao's hands were quick, and he went forward to grab it. Seeing that it was struggling in his hand, he said with surprise, "Master, it really is a profound level weapon, but it has a trace of spiritual essence. I need to bring it back and slowly refine it before it can be used by Master." Zhang Yan said with a smile, "Since it's already in my hands, there's no hurry. Clean up this place first, so that when the people from the sect come to investigate, they won't see any flaws." Luo Xiao nodded, and carefully cleaned up the surroundings. That beast-faced broadsword was also put away. After cleaning up all the traces, Zhang Yan ordered Luo Xiao to transform and hide in his sleeve, and he returned to where they came from. When he returned to the foot of the mountain, Zhang Yan saw that Xie Zongyuan hadn't left, and he couldn't help but be slightly surprised. However, at this time, there was a middle-aged cultivator standing beside Xie Zongyuan. When this person's eyes opened and closed, there was a flash of light from time to time. There were several deep wrinkles on his forehead, and his nose was huge, giving people a deep impression. Presumably, he was the cultivator from the Xia clan who came to help. When Xie Zongyuan saw Zhang Yan, his expression shook, and he said, "Senior brother Zhang is safe and sound, I'm relieved. May I know where that Yao cultivator is now?" Zhang Yan shook his head, and said, "I took a few turns in the forest and got rid of him. That Yao cultivator seemed to have lost his mind, and I don't know where he went after that." Xie Zongyuan's eyes revealed a slight disappointment, and he snorted coldly, and said, "What a pity, if he dares to come back, I'll definitely make him pay." The middle-aged man beside him coughed, and said, "Fourth brother, since there's nothing else, it's better for us to go back early, lest second uncle worry." "Wait, I still have something to do. Senior brother Zhang, please stay." Xie Zongyuan waved his hand behind him, and said, "Bring it up." More than 10 strong men behind him walked forward, and carried up the golden Jiao dragon that was bound by the Yuanyang golden chain. Xie Zongyuan walked in front of Zhang Qian, and solemnly cupped his hands to him, and said, "Today, senior brother Zhang stayed behind to help me, and I have no way to thank you. This golden Jiao dragon is given to senior brother. If you need anything in the future, don't hesitate to ask. Xie Zongyuan, will do my best." Chapter 74. 2 days later, at the boundless hall of the Dark Azure sect. The hall was filled with auspicious mist and clear air. 4 people were sitting on the jade platform. They were the masters of the 4 grotto heavens, Master Meng, Master Yan, Master Zhu, and Master Sunday. However, at this moment, everyone's appearance was blurry. It was as if they were flickering lights and shadows, real and illusory at the same time. Unexpectedly, all of them were clones of light. Taoist Master Meng, who was sitting in the middle, shifted his gaze to a disciple standing below the hall. He asked in a deep voice, "Zhuangbu Fan, did our disciples return safely?" Zhuangbu Fan bowed and answered, "Yes, Master." "Were there any injuries?" "No." Meng Zhen continued, "I heard that a disciple called Zhang Yan lured the monster away, just now to prevent my disciples from being slaughtered. Is this true?" Zhuangbu Fan answered, "Yes, it is true." At this time, Sun Jinren, who was sitting on the last seat, interrupted, "So it's Zhang Yan. What's his cultivation level now?" His words had a deeper meaning, implying that he and Zhang Yan were old friends. Master Yan and Master Zhu looked at each other and saw the sneer in each other's eyes. Zhuangbu Fan thought for a moment and said, "He should be at the 3rd layer of the bright Qi realm, but he hasn't condensed the seed of light yet." Meng Zhen nodded, "Bufan, you've handled this matter well. You may leave." "Yes." Zhuangbu Fan bowed and left. After he left, Taoist Master Meng didn't look away and said, "This time, one of my disciples was ambushed. Although Fang Zhen's aptitude is high, his temperament is unstable. He only cares about his own interests and doesn't care about the safety of his fellow disciples. Junior Marshal Brother Yan, you decide how to deal with your disciple." On his left, Master Yan's indifferent voice came, "Eldest senior brother, I've taken back the 5-fire divine weapon ring I gave him and punished him with closed-door meditation." Meng Zhen nodded his head and did not mention the matter again. He said, "Looks like the 3 pools of lake demons are not peaceful these days. Junior brothers, please inform your disciples to be on guard." Spiritual Master Zhu, who was sitting on his right, snorted and said, "If the 3 pools aren't cleaned up, our Yutsang sect will always be like a thorn in our backs." Meng Zhen nodded in agreement and said, "Previously, Sect Master did not act ruthlessly because the 3 pools were backed by the Water Kingdom of the Dang domain. Now that we have obtained the Water Kingdom's golden letter, we have a lot of time to spare even though the situation in the Water Kingdom is not stable. Now that we have obtained the Water Kingdom's golden letter, we have a lot of time to spare even though the situation in the Water Kingdom is not stable. It is for the best that they can't bear it anymore. Master intends to destroy the 3 pools within half a year." Zhu Jinren said in surprise, "Within half a year? Isn't that too hasty?" Meng Zhen sighed and said, in the land of Donghua continent, the Xianmen cultivators have occupied 10 spirit caves and the Tianji caves, while the 6 great demon sects have occupied 6 devil caves. Although they have been quite peaceful these years, there are still many hidden dangers. The day before yesterday, the sect master secretly calculated that the 1,000-year devil's calamity of Donghua continent is coming, and the strength of the 6 great demon sects will definitely increase. If our sect can take down the 3 pools as soon as possible and expand the sect's strength, we will have a higher chance of surviving this calamity. When the other 3 Zenrins heard this, they were all shocked and said, if that is the case, we have no objections. At this time, Sun Jinren said, speaking of the Water Kingdom's golden letter, Zhang Yan brought it after he went to the Water Kingdom. In my opinion, he should be credited for this. Zhu Jinren was displeased and said, Junior brother, you are wrong. Ji Zhoshang took out the golden letter, and this was the plan of the sect master. How can it be credited to Zhang Yan? Sun Jinren smiled and said, if it weren't for Zhang Yan's prompt decision to bring back the golden letter in advance, how could we talk about taking down the 3 pools? How could this move be in vain? Zhu Jinren refuted, even if it is credited, in my opinion, it is only a small contribution. Seeing the 2 arguing, Jinren Yen first looked at Meng Zhen and then said, don't argue, the 2 of you. Taking down the 3 pools is still a secret. It is not appropriate to reward him based on this. In my opinion, it is not too late to decide after the 3 pools have been taken down. Sun Jinren smiled faintly and said, fine, I will not mention this matter again. However, this time, Zhang Yan took the initiative to lead the evildoer away and prevented hundreds of disciples from being killed. This is also a great contribution. Zhu Jinren said coldly, Zhang Yan is a disciple of the Academy Master Zhou. Why is junior brother so concerned about him? Daoist Meng, who had been silent for a long time, finally said, that's not the case. Although this child has become a disciple of Schoolmaster Zhou, he cultivates junior apprentice brother Sun's Billowing Cloud's secret manual, so he can be considered one of us. Zhu Jinren snorted and did not say anything. Jinren Yen looked around and took the initiative to say, this time, it is my disciple who is lacking in virtue. Now that Zhang Yan has reached the 3rd stage of the clear qi realm, he must condense the mysterious light seed. Fine, I will give him a good cloud sand to help him. What do you all think? Sun Jinren nodded and said, okay. Meng Zhen looked at Zhu Jinren Yen and saw that he did not object, so he nodded and said, in that case, junior brother, go and arrange it. Jinren Yen stood up and bowed to leave. With a flash of light, he disappeared from the lotus platform. After he left, Zhu Jinren Yen did not say goodbye and left without a sound. At this moment, only Meng Zhen and Sun Jinren Yen were left in the main hall. Meng Zhen looked at Sun Jinren Yen and said slowly, Junior brother Sun, I know that you had the intention to cultivate Zhang Yan, but why did you not care about him later? Later on, Zhou Chengju wanted to take him as a disciple. If you came to me, you might not be able to fulfill his wish. Sun Jinren said solemnly, eldest senior brother, in the past 100 years, we have not produced a true disciple. After Zhang Yan entered the upper house, he was too ostentatious, so I deliberately gave him the cold shoulder. Firstly, I wanted to see how his temperament was, and secondly, I wanted to prevent the aristocratic families from paying too much attention to him, which would be disadvantageous to him. Being apprenticed to Zhou Chengju was something I took advantage of. In the Palace of Purity Palace, only the true disciple could inherit the position of the elder or the leader. If the teacher and disciple line paid too much attention to Zhang Yan, the Xianmen aristocratic families would inevitably be vigilant and would certainly suppress Zhang Yan with all their strength. Now that he was placed under Zhou Chengju's tutelage, it was a move that made the aristocratic families feel at ease. Meng Zhen nodded and sighed, junior brother's move, it can be said that you have put a lot of thought into it. On the other hand, Sun Jinren laughed, but from the looks of it now, Cone Nail can't hide in the bag forever. Meng Zhen chuckled, since he can't hide it anymore, then let him show himself. However, I wonder if he can handle it. Sun Jinren said lightly, if Zhang Yan can pass this trial, why would we be stingy with helping him? At the same time, in the Daming Grotto heaven, Fang Zhen, who was standing below, was nervously looking at Immortal Yen, who was sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed. At this moment, a light flashed, and the light-splitting incarnation returned to the body, opening its eyes slowly. Seeing this, Fang Zhen quickly stepped forward and asked, "Father, how is it?" Immortal Yen looked at him with a frown and said unhappily, "Didn't I say that you and I are not allowed to call each other father and son here?" Fang Zhen quickly lowered his head and said, "Yes, master." Immortal Yen nodded. If Zhang Yan didn't say what he said, it would be a small matter. Now that senior brother Meng has asked about it, I can't be too biased. For the next few months, you don't go anywhere. Just stay in the cave and practice the art of earth jade dust that I taught you. Yutzang's sect had 5 skills, 3 scriptures, and 12 supernatural powers. Only those who had made enough meritorious deeds for the sect could be taught. In the merit courtyard, 15 small achievements were a great achievement, and 6 great achievements were a great achievement. The art of earth jade dust could only be taught after one had made 3 great achievements. However, in order to train Fang Zhen, Immortal Yen had taught it to him privately. Fang Zhen recalled the words that Zhang Yan had cursed earlier, and he couldn't help but say with hatred, "This Zhang Yan really deserves to die." Immortal Yen said in a low voice, "Zhang Yan is also an anomaly. Senior brother Meng and junior brother Sun seem to want to support him. Don't meddle in this." Fang Zhen said anxiously, "Honored master, are we just going to let this matter go?" Immortal Yen waved his horsetail whisk, and a sharp light flashed in his eyes. He said, "Don't worry. How can we allow him to talk about our sect's people? I'll help you vent your anger. Moreover, with his identity as a true disciple, once his cultivation is successful in the future, he will definitely disrupt my original plan." In the line of master and disciple, the disciples they accepted were also divided into upper and lower levels. The disciples with outstanding aptitudes and comprehension would be trained with all their efforts, such as elixirs, magic treasures, and cultivation methods. However, among the younger generation, there were no particularly outstanding talents. Immortal Yen originally wanted to support Fang Zhen, but he didn't expect that he would fall because of a moment of carelessness. Moreover, if Fang Zhen wanted to stand out in the future, he would have to suppress Zhang Yan first. Fang Zhen was overjoyed and said, "Honored master, how will you deal with him?" Immortal Yen smiled faintly and said, "I'll give him a piece of cloud sand to help him form the mystic light as soon as possible." Hearing this, Fang Zhen couldn't help but shout, "Father, you want to help him?" Immortal Yen was displeased and said, "What do you know? He is a true disciple. No matter if he goes out to kill or does good deeds, he can be rejected under the mystic light realm. How can I let him cultivate peacefully until the competition of the sect?" Fang Zhen paused for a moment and then understood. He said, "Father, are you saying that we should let him reach the mystic light realm as soon as possible and order him to do good deeds for the sect? That way, he will be easy to play." Immortal Yen glanced at him and said, "You finally understand a little. Those who were good at swimming would drown in water. It was just like those who knew martial arts in the mortal world. Normal people who weren't good at martial arts could live a peaceful life, but if they knew martial arts and had a place to use them, they could die a violent death if they weren't careful." Immortal Yen smiled coldly and said, "Even if junior martial brother Meng and junior martial brother Sun know my intentions, they won't stop me." Immortal Yan's method was an overt scheme. He didn't need to worry that Zhang Yan wouldn't listen to him. At that time, he could just send Zhang Yan to kill 1 or 2 demonic geniuses and he would be able to keep his life. However, if he failed too many times, he wouldn't have the ability to rise again. One had to know that even if Mystic Light Realm cultivators had the same cultivation, if they didn't have a top-tier cultivation technique or a great teacher to guide them, the difference between them and the disciples that they had raised since they were young was like heaven and earth. Fang Zhen thought for a moment and said, "If Sun Jinren secretly taught him a secret technique." Immortal Yen smiled coldly and said, "No matter how talented he is, which cultivation technique in the sect doesn't require 10 to 20 years of hard work? Even the Kun-U-minute technique that I taught you has only reached the early stages of mastering it after 14 years, even with the help of spirit herbs and external cultivation techniques. This Zhang Yan only has a low-grade mist phase, and there aren't many techniques that he can cultivate. How can he succeed? Chapter 75. At sunrise, a practitioner came to the Spirit Page Island and handed a piece of cloud sand to Zhang Yan. He said that it was a reward from a Jinren for saving hundreds of fellow disciples that day. How dare he give me the cloud sand? Zhang Yan observed secretly and found that the man's expression did not change at all. BSP, after returning to the cave, he thought about it for a while and felt that this matter was reasonable. However, the person who came did not say which spiritual master gave it to him. Either he really did not know, or he was taken care of and deliberately hid it. If it was the latter, then it would be worth pondering. He picked up the cloud sand and observed it carefully in his hand. The shape of the cloud sand was like a big bead, round and translucent. There seemed to be clouds rolling in it, reminding people of the sea of clouds in the sky. It would be a rare treasure in the mortal world. Zhang Yan rubbed it with his palms and found that the cloud sand was emitting a familiar aura. There was a strong suction coming from his palms and the profound qi in his body was stirring. It seemed that as long as he relaxed his consciousness, the gate would open and the profound qi would be pulled over. Zhang Yan had read many Taoist books that described this object. From the records, this cloud sand was of superior quality. The inferior cloud sand was gray in color and detested by spiritual qi. If one tried to refine it, it would not be useful. If it was of a higher grade, the cloud sand would give off light and spiritual qi would be easily attached to it. If it was of a higher grade, the cloud sand would be bright and close to spiritual qi. When refining it, there would be no obstacles. The last one was the cloud sand in front of him. It was born to attract spiritual qi and could nourish the profound qi without any movement as if it came from the same source as the human body. He smiled. No matter if it was a trick or not, he had the broken jade in his hand. What was there to be afraid of? He sat on the cattail hassock and sank his mind into the broken jade. Then, according to the method of the Tai Golden Book, he let go of the restraint and let the spiritual qi flow into the cloud sand. Instantly, the spiritual qi in his body that was nourished by the spiritual qi was emptied. He explored the jade for 3 days and 3 nights before he came out. At this moment, his eyes were clear and there was a hint of understanding in his expression. According to the Tai Golden Book, one had to condense 2 seeds of mysterious light to practice this cultivation method. The first was the fire seed, and the second was the metal seed. Then, 2 qi of mysterious light would be produced. When fighting against an enemy, the metal and fire seed would intertwine and grind, and it would naturally be able to melt gold and melt iron. Since the method of condensing the 2 profound lights was different, he initially thought that it was a transformation between the cultivation methods. Only now did he realize that it was actually referring to the cloud sand. It made sense when he thought about it. The cloud sand was condensed from the essence of the 5-element divine sand, so it was naturally divided into the 5 elements. Moreover, the cloud sand in his hand just happened to be of the metal attribute. When it evolved in the broken jade, when the primordial essence gathered on it, it was especially lively and nimble when it refined the metal attribute magic art. However, when it refined the fire attribute magic art, the effect was much worse. Zhang Yan couldn't help but laugh. This spiritual master probably thought that he was practicing the Billowing Cloud secret manual, which was biased towards the water attribute, so he took great pains to find this metal sand for himself. If he really only practiced the Billowing Cloud secret manual and relied on this cloud sand to cultivate, even though it wouldn't affect the progress of his cultivation, but when he condensed the mysterious light, compared to others, he would inevitably be inferior. But then again, if he really only practiced the low-grade mist phase, then it really didn't matter what the cloud sand's attribute was. To be able to condense a top-grade cloud sand into mysterious light was already a great fortune. What more could he ask for? Even if he knew it was wrong, he would still have to accept it. Unfortunately, the spiritual master didn't know that he was practicing the Tai Golden Book. This cloud sand instead helped him a lot, saved him a lot of effort, and inadvertently solved a doubt. But in this way, he still needed to find another fire cloud sand, which was a little difficult. After pacing a few steps, he suddenly raised his head. Got it. Wang Pan, who was killed by him, practiced the fire attribute technique, and had just reached the third level of the clear Qi realm. The next step was to condense the mysterious light seed, so he had no reason not to prepare. Also, there were many Wang clansmen who practiced on the Red Cloud Island, so the clan definitely had fire cloud sand. He had the Red Cloud Pill Fire Scroll, so if he wanted to exchange with the Wang clan, they wouldn't refuse. He could ask Xie Zongyuan to step in, and with him mediating, there was an 80 to 90% chance of success. After thinking through this problem, Zhang Yan was in a good mood. He walked out of the cave and came to the side of a wide river on the island. Looking down, he saw a golden-scaled demon serpent rolling in the river, roaring repeatedly, and from time to time, it would create shocking waves. If it was in the middle of the sea, there would be huge waves rolling and rolling. Zhang Yan raised his eyebrows. It was just a golden serpent that hadn't transformed yet, and it already had such shocking power. If it was a real dragon, how powerful would it be? It would probably be able to overturn rivers and seas. Thinking about this, his heart skipped a beat. Su Yang once said that there was a dragon residence under the Nine-Tune Stream Palace, and there was the remains of a 10,000-year-old azure dragon. Chu Cheng, Golden Serpent, Azure Dragon, could there be a connection between these three? It was a pity that Chu Cheng had been killed by him, and his origin spirit had also scattered. Even if he could capture him alive, this demon was not in a clear state of mind. He didn't know the soul-searching technique, so he probably wouldn't be able to get anything out of him. After pondering for a moment, he took out a beautiful piece of jade from his sleeve and said, Su Yang, do you know what cultivation technique your brother cultivated? Su Yang could only barely maintain his divine soul within the beautiful jade, but it was far weaker than before. He was clearly dispirited and listless. If he didn't find a body soon, he would probably dissipate in less than 2 or 3 years. So, he usually didn't move or speak if he didn't have to. He only did his best to maintain that trace of origin spirit. Now that he heard Zhang Yan's question, he didn't dare to not answer and said weakly, reporting to senior brother, my brother's technique is very secretive. I don't know, but every time he circulates his qi, he will hide in the cellar. I heard from the servants that sometimes there will be roars and howls coming from there. After hearing this, Zhang Yan found a clue in his heart and was secretly shocked. This Sui Hong, could it be that he wanted to use his human body to cultivate a demonic technique? He had read the Golden Fruit of Vitality book from the Water Kingdom and naturally understood the theory behind it. When a demonic cultivator reached the third level of the clear Qi realm, he could take a bone from the corpse of an ancient demon and implant it into his own body. He could sense the blood of the ancient demon in his veins and use it to nourish and refine it. After refining the bone, he could then melt away the old bones in his body one by one. This way, every time he advanced to the next level, he would have a new set of bones. In the end, he would be able to recreate the body of an ancient demon. This method was worthy of being called a demonic cultivation method, as it had a savage aura to it. Furthermore, this method required the inheritance of the ancient demon's blood. It wasn't something that a human body or a normal demonic race could do. Hence, King Zhen wasn't afraid that Zhang Yan would learn it. However, Zhang Yan had a feeling that Sui Hong might have a solution. If that was the case, once he obtained the remains of the Azure Dragon, he would have the body of an ancient sky demon. He would be indestructible and would not die. Who in the world would be able to stop him then? Just as he was deep in thought, he saw a splash and the water splashed up, wetting a large patch of soil. It seemed like the golden Jiao dragon in the river felt that its place was too small, so it started to roll around impatiently. Zhang Yan shifted his gaze and looked over. This golden Jiao dragon's appearance was definitely not without reason. It might even be the key. He took 2 steps to the shore of the lake and looked down. Let me ask you, are you willing to recognize me as your master? When he spoke, he was looking down on it. Naturally, his tone carried a sense of authority. However, the golden Jiao dragon didn't seem to buy it. It stayed in the water and stared at him without moving. The two of them stared at each other for a long time. Even though the golden Jiao dragon's eyes were fierce, there was a hint of fear that Zhang Yan could not hide. That was because it was trapped in this place, and its life or death was in the hands of someone else. Zhang Yan smiled and said, "Interesting. I know you weren't captured by me, and you were trapped because you encountered a disaster. That's why you're unwilling. Since you're unwilling, I won't force you." He reached into his sleeve and took out a pure white porcelain bottle. He pulled out the stopper and poured out a medicinal pill. He flicked his finger into the water. "You failed to transform, so this transformation pill is no longer of much use to you. However, it can help you get rid of your diaphragm bones and allow you to speak. In 3 days, I'll ask you again." The golden Jiao dragon looked at the medicinal pill that was bobbing up and down in the water. After hesitating for a moment, it finally swallowed the medicinal pill. It then dove into the water to refine the medicinal power. Zhang Yan stood there for a moment. Just as he was about to return to his cave, he heard a whistle from outside the island. It seemed like someone had come to visit. A cloud appeared under his feet, and he slowly floated into the sky. He saw a cloud-shrouding flying ship floating in the air, and a cultivator in a Taoist robe standing on it. His cultivation level was similar to his, so he took out a talisman to open the seal and said, "What brings you here, fellow Taoist?" The man was expressionless, as if there was a thick layer of frost covering his face. He reached into his sleeve and took out a talisman. He said coldly, "My name is Zhuangzi, and I'm a deacon of the Upright Purity Court. Today, I was ordered by senior brother Zhuang Bufan to clean up the sect. From today onwards, all disciples under him are not allowed to keep demons or concubines. From now on, all disciples will need a talisman or jade token to enter and exit the sect. Every island and mountain will be searched once a month." Zhuang Bufan. Zhang Yan narrowed his eyes. He had a deep impression of this person. That day, he wanted to go to the clear nether heavenly lake to look for Yun Sha, but this person didn't say a word. With a flick of his sleeve, he brought him and his disciples back. Later, he asked Xie Zong Yuan and found out that this was one of the 12 divine arts of Yingcang sect. It was called the Great Overarching Heavenly Sleeve, and it was used to store treasures. It was said that when cultivated to the peak, one could store rivers, lakes, seas, and mountains. Yingcang sect's founder used this art to store 9 famous mountains into the sect. 160 years ago, Zhuang Bufan was a direct disciple. Later on, he became enlightened Zhu's disciple, and his cultivation level was unfathomable. There were 10 disciples in the sect, and 4 of them were master and disciple, and this person was one of them. 16 years ago, he was sent out to suppress a small demon's cave. He only returned to the sect recently and accepted the Upright Purity Court's edict, becoming the vice dean. The Upright Purity Court's sect master's law forbade keeping demons and concubines. It was obvious that Zhuang Bufan wanted to establish his authority, so he used this matter to make a big deal out of it. Seeing that Zhang Yan didn't answer, Zhuang Bufan snorted and said, "I'll give you 3 days. If you don't clean up the demon concubines on the island by then, I'll personally come and help you clean them up." With that said, he cupped his fists and turned to leave. When Zhang Yan heard this, a sharp glint flashed in his eyes, and he sneered, "Where did this thief come from? How dare he pretend to be the Upright Purity Court's deacon? Stay with me." With a flick of his sleeve, a blue sword ray shot out. Chapter 76. Zhuangzi was alarmed when he felt the blue light approaching his body. In a panic, he dodged and the star's sword pellet fell mercilessly, cutting the flying boat he was on into 2. Stunned for a moment, he shouted angrily, "Zhang Yan, how dare you? Don't you know I'm..." Zhang Yan wouldn't waste time talking to him. He pointed with his finger and the sword pellet spun in the air, slashing over again. Seeing Zhang Yan's ice-cold eyes, Zhuangzi was terrified. He didn't have time to think and hurriedly formed a spell. With a hiss, a white sword pellet also rushed up and flew in the air. He leaped forward again, wanting to block it. Who knew that just as the two were about to collide, the star's sword pellet seemed to have a mind of its own. It suddenly spun and circled around. Zhuangzi couldn't help turning pale with fright. He hurriedly twisted his body to retreat, desperately urging his sword pellet to tangle with it. However, once Zhang Yan's high-layered waves sword force was unleashed, how could it be so easy to block it? The sword pellet spun repeatedly in the air. When the aura overlapped to 24, the surrounding star fragments crackled and exploded. The blue light was already blazing like a flame, its momentum extremely terrifying. Zhuangzi blocked left and right, exhausted from running for his life. Seeing that he had no more strength left, Zhang Yan no longer hesitated. He activated his spell, and the sword pellet suddenly fell. With a clang, it knocked on the opponent's sword pellet. This ordinary sword pellet was only made of gold and white, so how could it withstand the impact of the star essence sand? It was like a taut zither string being snapped, instantly exploding. The sword pellet that was connected to his mind was broken, and Zhuangzi spat out a mouthful of blood. Before he could do anything, he saw the blue light rushing towards him without stopping. In his fright, he let out a wild roar and a small square gray flag flew out from his body. He grabbed the flagpole and unfolded it in the wind. The flag's surface billowed and instantly grew several times bigger. Like a dark cloud, it covered his body and blocked the line of sight between the two of them. Zhang Yan scoffed coldly and pointed with his finger. Another green light shot out from his sleeve, and its speed was actually not inferior to the sword pill. With a poochie sound, the green light pierced through the flag. With a blood-curdling scream and a rain of blood, Zhuangzi's right hand, which was holding the flag, was chopped off. His heart trembled and he didn't dare to stay any longer. With his left hand covering the injured part, he turned around and fled. Before he could run far, a streak of green light caught up to him. It pierced through his back and exited through his abdomen. He let out a muffled groan and fell from the sky. Zhang Yan caught up to him, grabbed him, and knocked him unconscious. He carried him back to the island and threw him on the ground. He said to Luo Xiao, "Use some pills to keep him alive. Don't let him die. I have other uses for him." Luo Xiao was surprised. "Master, is this person really a fake?" Zhang Yan shook his head and said with a smile, "This person must be Zhuang Bufan's subordinate. Otherwise, how could he have such guts?" "What?" Luo Xiao was shocked. "Then if Master captures him, won't Zhuang Bufan harm Master?" That day, when she saw Zhuang Bufan's supernatural power, she was also shocked. With a wave of the great overarching heavenly sleeves, it covered the sky and covered the earth. It gave people a feeling that it was unstoppable and unavoidable. Zhang Yan smiled lightly and said, "You don't have to worry. I naturally have my reasons for capturing him. Although Zhuang Bufan's cultivation is extraordinary, he still has to follow the rules of the sect. How can I allow him to do as he pleases? Watch how I deal with him." Luo Xiao trusted Zhang Yan very much, so when she heard this, her heart calmed down. Zhang Yan calmly returned to his cave dwelling and wrote a letter. He then rolled it up and stuffed it into the hilt of the Howling Lake golden sword. Holding it in his hand, he chanted a spell and a golden light soared into the sky, heading towards the direction of the Danding courtyard. In the time it took to eat a meal, the golden sword returned. He opened the letter and read it. He then looked into the distance and sneered, "Zhuang Bufan, I have nothing to do with you. But since you came knocking on my door, how can I not return the favor?" He stood up and changed into the Taoist robe of a true disciple. He then summoned Luo Xiao and gave her a few instructions. Then, he released the flying ship and carried the unconscious Zhuang Bufan to the Zhengqing courtyard. The Zhengqing courtyard was located on one of the 9 peaks of the mystic tortoise continent, the Heavenly Prisoner Peak. Outside the courtyard, there were 7 giant tablets with the rules of the Fengcang faction engraved on them. On each tablet, there was a Bian, staring at the passers-by. There was no jade or gold in front of the courtyard gate, only a huge bluestone that extended from the empty space in front of the courtyard into the inner hall. At the gate, there were 2 watchtowers with 7 killing swords hanging on each eave. On the left and right of the watchtowers, there was a drum and a gong, one for growth and the other for death. The closer Zhang Yan got, the more he felt that the entire mountain was shrouded by a solemn and murderous aura. From afar, he controlled the boat to descend from the clouds and woke Zhuang Bufan up. He then carried him towards the mountain gate. When Zhuang Bufan woke up, he was surprised to find himself in front of the Zhengqing courtyard. He shouted, "Zhang Yan, I am the deacon of the Zhengqing courtyard, a disciple of Vice-Chancellor Zhuang. How dare you hurt me? You lawless disciple, you are insolent. You are unforgivable. I will report this to Vice-Chancellor Zhuang and have your cultivation crippled." Zhang Yan ignored his words and carried him all the way to the front of the Zhengqing courtyard gate. He then threw Zhuang Bufan on the ground and let him scream and scream. There were more than 100 strong men with golden axes standing on both sides of the gate. After hearing Zhuang Bufan's words, everyone looked at Zhang Yan with a strange expression. This person was really daring. After injuring a deacon, he still dared to come to the Zhengqing courtyard and show off his strength? However, Zhang Yan's expression was calm, as if he didn't care. He must have something to rely on. No one dared to act rashly without orders. For a moment, apart from Zhuang Bufan's cursing, no one dared to move. The disciples passing by all raised their eyebrows, each of them dumbfounded. Most of them were here to receive their punishment. Which one of them wasn't trembling with fear and treading on thin ice? None of them were like Zhang Yan, who dared to grab a deacon of the Zhengqing courtyard and throw him in front of the gate. They couldn't help but stop and watch. One of the deacon disciples saw that the situation wasn't good and hurriedly went to report. After about the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, a middle-aged cultivator walked out. This person was broad-boned and had a round face. His hair was combed into a bun and he didn't wear a crown. When he saw Zhang Yan's direct disciple robes, he frowned slightly. His gaze then fell on Zhuang Bufan. He saw that Zhuang Bufan was covered in blood and had lost an arm. He was clearly heavily injured. His frown deepened and he looked at Zhang Yan. "Who are you? Why are you making a ruckus in front of the Zhengqing courtyard?" Before Zhang Yan could reply, Zhuang Bufan, who was lying on the ground, began to shout, "Vice Monastery Head Pan, my name is Zhuang Bufan. I am a deacon under Vice Monastery Head Zhuang. This person's name is Zhang Yan. Today, I received orders to read Vice Monastery Head Zhuang's decree to purge this person of all the beautiful concubines on the island. Who would have thought that not only would he not listen to my orders, he would even cut off my arm? I ask Vice Monastery Head Pan to give me justice." Vice Monastery Head Pan solemnly asked, "You say you are a deacon of the Upright Purity Courtyard, what proof do you have?" Zhuang Bufan hurriedly said, "I have a talisman on me as proof. There are also people in the courtyard who recognize this disciple." Vice Monastery Head Pan ordered the deacon disciple beside him, "Go bring the talisman over." The deacon disciple hurriedly came forward and retrieved the talisman from Zhuang Bufan's body before handing it over to Vice Monastery Head Pan. After Vice Monastery Head Pan inspected the talisman, he called another disciple over to confirm that Zhuang Bufan was indeed Zhuang Bufan's disciple. His gaze swept over Zhang Yan. "You have injured my Upright Purity Courtyard's disciple. What else do you have to say?" Zhang Yan was not the slightest bit afraid. He pointed at Zhuang Bufan and said, "Vice Monastery Head Pan, since this person is a disciple of the Upright Purity Courtyard, then I would like to ask, is his name on the courtyard's register?" Vice Monastery Head Pan's expression changed when he heard this. His lips trembled as if he wanted to say something, but he couldn't open his mouth. Zhang Yan faintly smiled. He had guessed correctly. This loophole was something that even the people of the Upright Purity Courtyard would unconsciously overlook. Within the Dark Azure sect, each courtyard's register didn't have many positions. Most of the courtyards only had a dozen or so people, such as the monastery head, pavilion head, and deacon. This was because the moment they received the position, the sect would bestow them with spirit shells, divine sand, pills, and so on. Moreover, the amount was not small, so these positions were like pieces of juicy meat. They had long since been carved up by the aristocratic families and the disciples. Those who received the position all had great backgrounds. The monastery heads couldn't order them around, but they were powerless to change it, so they could only arrange for other people to handle matters for them. Over the past 100 years, everyone had become accustomed to this. But although these people claimed to hold positions in the courtyard, in reality, it was only in name. For example, Zhang Yan himself was the overseer of the Dan Ding Institute, but this was only a nominal position, with no real power. His name was not recorded in the records, so it was impossible for him to receive any more rewards from the sect. His authority came from Zhou Chengju, and if Zhou Chengju were to leave, his status would be useless. According to the sect's rules, Zhuang Yi was just Zhuang Bufan's subordinate, so he didn't have the right to call himself a deacon of the Upright Purity Courtyard. The reason he was so overbearing was because he relied on Zhuang Bufan's influence. But once this skin was torn off, they were actually nothing. Zhang Yan coldly said, "The Upright Purity Courtyard means to cleanse the roots of the sect. This person is clearly not a deacon of the Upright Purity Courtyard, so why would he use this name? And he even dares to threaten a direct disciple. It's clearly Zhuang Bufan who is conniving behind the scenes to seek personal benefits." As a vice monastery head, if Zhuang Bufan isn't upright himself, how can he be upright? Seeing Zhang Yan's accusations being placed on him one by one, assistant monastery head Pan's expression changed from shock to surprise. Finally, a faint smile appeared at the corners of his mouth. He could see that today, Zhang Yan had captured Zhuang Yi and thrown him in front of the Upright Purity Courtyard. It was clear that he wanted to blow up the matter. Ruining Zhuang Bufan's reputation was secondary, but more importantly, he wanted to give others an excuse to attack Zhuang Bufan. The Upright Purity Courtyard's sect master had a lot of authority, and the vice monastery head position had always been fought over. Zhuang Bufan had only been in this position for a few days, and his position wasn't stable yet. There were many people who had their eyes on him, and once someone had something on him, he would definitely be attacked. How could he hold this position for long? Vice Monastery head Pan coldly laughed in his heart. Zhuang Bufan, you've been bossing people around the moment you arrived, treating us like we're nothing. Who would have thought that this day would come? Chapter 77. 3 days later, Danding Yard's headmaster, Zhou Chengju, met with the headmaster and said that his disciple, Zhang Yan, kept a batch of enchantresses, which were bought from the Shui kingdom and given to him as a gift. Zhuang Bufan did not investigate the inside story and made a rash decision. He was too impetuous. Sun Jinren also complained, every family keeps enchantresses and does not violate the rules of the school. Zhuang Bufan's action has stirred up trouble for no reason. As soon as the two of them spoke, the matter became a hot topic. Zhuang Bufan was called in by Immortal Yen and reprimanded. Later, he went to the headmaster and begged for forgiveness. He barely managed to keep his position as the vice headmaster of the Zhengqing Yard, but he did not dare to mention the matter of cleaning up the school's atmosphere. As for the instigator, Zhang Yan, no one paid attention to him. He cultivated peacefully in his abode. In his opinion, Zhuang Bufan was too impatient. He acted as soon as he became the vice headmaster. Even if he did not target him, the slightest mistake could easily be used against him. In fact, sitting in Zhuang Bufan's position was the safest choice. He looked outside the Spirit Page Island. At this moment, the setting sun was shining brightly, the sky and water seemed to be heavily smeared by a brush dipped in cinnabar. He suddenly remembered that today was the last day of his appointment with the Flood Dragon. He called Luo Xiao, walked out of the cave and walked towards the riverbank. Walking along the stream, in the time it took to eat a meal, he arrived at the edge of the inner river where the water splashed. Looking around, he chuckled and said, "You don't need to hide, I know you're here. Have you considered what I said 3 days ago? I'm suffocated. I'm suffocated." The golden Jiao dragon's head popped out of the water. After not seeing him for a few days, he could already speak. However, his mouth was full of complaints. "There are no big fishes or insects on your island. You only eat tasteless pills every day. Plus, this place is so narrow that I can't even move around. It's really hard to bear." Zhang Yan smiled playfully and said, "I can let you go, but you have to recognize me as your master." The golden flood dragon arched its back and said unwillingly, "Why should I recognize you as my master? Your cultivation is not high. If I want to recognize a master, I might as well recognize a cultivator with a high cultivation. Like the person who brought you back that day." "Oh. You mean Zhuang Bufan? You sure are ambitious." Hearing him belittle his cultivation, Zhang Yan was not angry at all. Instead, he felt a sense of heroism. "Although my current cultivation is inferior to him, it doesn't mean that I will be inferior to him in the future. Within 100 years, I will definitely catch up to him." The golden flood dragon rolled its eyes and said, "Then why don't we make a bet? If you can defeat this person in 100 years, I will recognize you as my master. How about it?" Zhang Yan pointed his finger at the flood dragon and said with a smile, "What a cunning flood dragon. Do you really think that I will be fooled? Even if I can defeat it in the future, do you think that I will raise you for 100 years in vain? You only know how to take advantage of others and are unwilling to suffer losses. Serves you right for failing to transform." The golden flood dragon said resentfully, "If I didn't find a way out early, I would have been captured and died. What's the point of passing this tribulation?" Zhang Yan asked with interest, "Oh? Captured by who?" The golden flood dragon seemed to realize that it had let the cat out of the bag and quickly shut its mouth. Zhang Yan smiled and didn't pursue the matter. Instead, he pointed at Luo Xiao who was standing beside him and said, "Look at this fellow Taoist beside me. She is also a Yao cultivator. I can see that your qi, blood, and yuan qi are very beneficial to her. If she eats you, her cultivation will definitely improve." The golden flood dragon looked at Luo Xiao and a trace of panic flashed in its eyes. Zhang Yan saw the golden flood dragon's eyes darting around, but it didn't say anything. So, he waved his sleeve and said, "Fellow Taoist Luo, since he refuses to recognize me as his master, then forget it. You can do whatever you want to him." After saying that, he pretended to leave. Luo Xiao gracefully bowed and said, "Thank you, master." Seeing that Zhang Yan was about to leave and Luo Xiao's cold gaze, the golden flood dragon couldn't help but become anxious and said, "Don't go, don't go. I'll recognize you as my master, I'll recognize you as my master." Zhang Yan stopped and thought it was funny. This Yao dragon was so cunning, but he didn't expect it to be so spineless. It softened after a little threat. Just as he was about to turn around, he heard someone say from the sky, "Is senior brother Zhang here? I've come to visit." When the golden flood dragon heard this, it buried its head into the water and disappeared. Seeing its appearance, Zhang Yan snorted and said, "You can hide the first time, but you can't hide forever." The golden flood dragon murmured in the water, "Today we have wine, today we get drunk. Every moment we can drag is the moment we get." Zhang Yan was about to take out a talisman to open the restriction when he heard the golden flood dragon's words. This golden flood dragon's temperament was quite interesting. Since it couldn't escape from here, there was no need to rush to force it. Xia Zongyuan's flying ship slowly descended from the sky, laughing loudly, "Senior brother Zhang, you've defeated Zhuang Bufan. Good, good, this Xia admires you." Zhang Yan cupped his fists and said, "Thank you, senior brother Xia, for your praise." Zhang Yan's actions were merely taking advantage of the situation. At this time, a young cultivator standing next to Xia Zongyuan said, "What a great, taking advantage of the situation. The sects have been fighting with the 3 lakes for many years, who doesn't have a few beauties to keep up appearances. If Zhuangbu Fan is allowed to do as he pleases, it will only cause the heavens to be angry. Senior brother Zhang has saved him this time. Zhang Yan couldn't help but take a serious look at this person. This person was also at the third level of clear qi. His face was round, his lips were red, his skin was white like jade, and his fingers were slender and plump like a married woman's. He actually had the appearance of a man and a woman. If it wasn't for his powerful voice, broad shoulders, and a knot in his throat, he would have mistaken him for a beauty. I wonder who is beside brother Xia. Xia Zongyuan pulled the person beside him over and introduced, this is Lu Tao, senior brother Lu. He cultivates at Ing Celestial Island and is also a free and unfettered guest. Lu Tao cupped his fists and said, I've long admired senior brother Zhang's great name. Don't listen to senior brother Xia's nonsense. What free and unfettered guest? I came from the cold spectrum, and only people like senior brother Xia treat me as someone important. Xia Zongyuan said unhappily, what cold spectrum clan? Although I'm a member of the Xia clan, I've never judged people by their status, and I've never looked down on the heroes of the world. Lu Tao smiled and said, it's a slip of the tongue, junior brother. After exchanging a few polite words with the two, Zhang Yan led them into the cave residence to entertain them. He still had a lot of fine wine that he had brought from Wang Pan's place. He usually didn't drink it, so it was just right to serve it to the two. He also ordered the beauty Yuji to catch over 100 inkstone chickens. These Yuji had all received training in the water country and were used to serving people. They naturally knew the way of cooking. Seeing that the sky was gradually darkening, Zhang Yan felt excited and ordered dozens of strong men to push a pleasure boat into the great marsh. They loaded all the fine wine onto the boat and went for a ride with the two of them to admire the moon. The inkstone chickens were delicious to begin with, and after being roasted by Yuji, the two ate heartily. At this moment, Xia Zongyuan didn't have the slightest demeanor of a disciple of a noble clan. He was somewhat unrestrained as he said loudly, delightful, delightful. Normally, I can't taste such delicacies without restraint. It looks like I'll have to visit senior brother Zhang more often. Lu Tao also nodded and said, this delicacy makes today's trip worth it. Zhang Yan raised his cup and said, if the two of you can come often, that would be Zhang Yan's fortune. Come, let's drink. The three of them raised their cups and drank it all in one gulp. After putting down their cups, the three of them felt a little closer to each other. After chatting for a while, Lu Tao suddenly said, I wonder if the two senior brothers have heard that the sect master is going to exterminate the 3 lakes demonic beasts within half a year? That's right. Xia Zongyuan nodded and put down his cup. He said, I've also heard this rumor. It's said that the sect master is planning something big and is anxious to expand the sect's strength. If our generation's disciples make great contributions in this battle, they might even be rewarded with a paradise. Moreover, in the 3 lakes, other than the rare divine sand and herbs of our Dark Azure sect, there are also 5 deep lake shell farms. It's said that if a disciple can behead any one of the 3 demon lords, the sect master will allow him to establish a residence outside the sect. Lu Tao's eyes twinkled as he played with the cup in his hand. He said, establishing a residence outside the sect. If it's really like this, then it's worth a gamble. Xia Zongyuan sighed and said, unfortunately, we are only at the 3rd level of the clear qi realm. Even if we can condense the mystic light seed in 1 or 2 months, we won't be able to reach the mystic light realm in a year and a half. Going to battle is just sending us to our deaths. Lu Tao, however, smiled deeply and said, that might not be the case. If the 2 senior brothers are interested, I have a way. Zhang Yan smiled and didn't say anything. Xia Zongyuan, however, said, if senior brother Long knows something, there's no harm in saying it. Lu Tao slowly said, have the 2 of you heard of the Ci demon cave in our sect? Xia Zongyuan thought for a while and said, I've heard a little about it. Zhang Yan didn't know about it, but he wasn't in a hurry to speak and waited for the other to continue. Lu Tao's eyes twinkled as he said, the dragon lake that our Yutsang sect resides in is one of the 10 great spirit caves of the Donghua continent. It's full of vitality and is a 1 in a million cultivation paradise. However, only the sect master can cultivate in the eye of the cave. However, there are 10 other great spirit caves in this world, and the spirit chi there is no less than the spirit caves. The 6 sects of the demon sect occupy 6 of them, and the other 4 are unknown. Pausing, he looked at Zhang Yan and Xie Zongyuan and said, "This CI is very likely one of the branches of the 4 spirit caves. The spirit chi there is comparable to the high-class paradise that you spiritual masters cultivate in. If we can cultivate there for 2 months, it will be equivalent to cultivating in the outside world for several years. If we can cultivate to the mystic light realm, when we come out, we will be able to show off our skills in the Battle of the 3 Lakes." Zhang Yan's eyes flashed and he asked, "This spirit cave is actually in our Yutzang sect?" Lu Tao nodded and said, "At the extreme west of the Dragon Lake is the place where the CI is located. There is a guardian palace there, and a female deity with high cultivation is cultivating there." Xie Zongyuan frowned and said, "I heard that there are demons wandering in the spirit cave. They are ever-changing, good at bewitching people, and they like to eat the flesh of living people. I wonder if the rumor is true." Lu Tao nodded and said, "That's right. The sect has always sent reliable disciples to eliminate the demons in there. Firstly, it is for them to gain experience, and secondly, it can increase their cultivation. Zhuang Bufan also went there 16 years ago, and he only returned recently. His cultivation is incomparable to 16 years ago, and he has also mastered the great overarching heavenly sleeve. It is all thanks to this demon cave." Xie Zongyuan pondered and said, "If we want to conquer the 3 lakes in one fell swoop, we will need to gather disciples, medicinal pills, and magical treasures. We also have to guard against sneak attacks from other sections. This preparation will take at least 2 to 3 months, but we can make it in time." Lu Tao looked at him and reminded, "But this place is dangerous, and most of the disciples who went there to cultivate won't be able to return. 16 years ago, we sent a total of 7 disciples, and only Zhuang Bufan returned. There is no news of the other 2. If we go there, we can't go too deep. Fortune comes from danger, let's do it." Xie Zongyuan threw the wine cup in his hand to the ground and stood up. He looked at Zhang Yan and said, "Brother Zhang, are you willing to go with me?" Chapter 78. As soon as Xie Zongyuan asked this question, Lu Tao's gaze also followed along. Zhang Yan smiled lightheartedly and said, "People like us who cultivate to attain immortality have always been a path that goes against the heavens, and difficulties and dangers are all tempering. Since there's a door of convenience before us, how can we not go?" Xie Zongyuan was overjoyed and said, "Good. Senior brother Zhang is straightforward, then it's a deal." Lu Tao said, "However, entering the eye of the devil's cave has some rules, and we can't be too hasty. We still need to make preparations. For example, the female immortal of the Guardian Palace won't let you go for no reason. Everyone needs to pay 500 spirit shells." Xie Zongyuan waved his hand and said, "It's just a small number, don't worry about it. Leave it to me." The Xia family was ranked second among the 12 main families, and Xie Zongyuan was a direct disciple. Thousands of spirit shells were naturally not a problem for him, and he could take in Zhang Yan and Lu Tao. No matter how one looked at it, it was a good deal. Lu Tao stood up and cupped his hands at Zhang Yan and Xie Zongyuan. He said, "I won't hide it from you two. I know a Taoist friend who has long passed the 3rd level of clear qi. Due to his limited talent, he spent 3 years to condense the seed of mysterious light, but he couldn't break through. This time, he also has the intention to go." Xie Zongyuan was startled, then said without a care, "Since he's a friend of senior brother Lu, he's naturally someone worth befriending. Let's go together. Entering the devil's cave is also dangerous, and one more person means one more force." Lu Tao smiled and said, "Of course I won't ask senior brother Xia to spend money for nothing. This person also comes from the cold book. Although his family has long declined, they have a magic treasure passed down from their ancestors, called the Agarwood boat. It can go thousands of feet deep into the pond, and the eye of the devil's cave is also under the pond. If we hold our breath and go, it will inevitably consume our vital energy. With this boat, we can go there. Xie Zongyuan said happily, "Good, senior brother Lu is very thoughtful. When I return to the clan, I will also ask my clansmen to see if I can get some information about the devil's cave." He patted the table again and pulled Lu Tao to sit down and drink with him. After discussing this matter, the three of them let loose and enjoyed the fine wine and delicacies to their heart's content. When they were in high spirits, Zhang Yan saw that the moon was bright in the sky and the tides were surging on the great marsh. He waved his hand and a beautiful Yuji swam over from the water. He lowered his head and whispered a few words to her. Beauty Yuji nodded cheerfully, dived into the water, and disappeared. Xie Zongyuan asked curiously, "What is senior brother Zhang doing?" Zhang Yan smiled and said, "Senior brothers, you will know soon." Not long after, the surrounding waters suddenly lit up with a brilliant brilliance. Specks of light floated up and down in the water as they flickered. Xie Zongyuan and Long Tao glanced over, and they felt as if they were floating on a boat in the Milky Way. When they looked carefully, it turned out that over 100 Yuji beauties had floated up to the surface of the water together, and each of them held a shining pearl in their hands that reflected the bright moon in the sky. Xie Zongyuan's eyes lit up. He hit the wine cup with his chopsticks and praised, "Wonderful, wonderful, this scene deserves a jug." After saying that, he rolled up his sleeves, raised his head, and poured the jug of wine into his mouth. Lu Tao sighed and said, "This must be the scenery of the water country, the Yuji holding the pearl. I didn't expect to see it in the sect today. If we let Zhuangbu Fan do as he pleases, I'm afraid we won't be able to see such a wonderful scene." Xie Zongyuan glared at him with dissatisfaction and said, "There is a beautiful scenery in front of us, why did senior brother Lu mention him? Drinking as punishment." Lu Tao smiled and drank the wine in one gulp. The three of them swam until late into the night, both the host and the guest were happy. After deciding on a date for their next meeting, Zhang Yan sent Long Tao away but asked Xie Zongyuan to stay behind. He cupped his hands and said, "Senior brother Xie, I have a favor to ask of you." Xie Zongyuan said with emotion, "Junior brother, you don't have to be so polite, please speak." Zhang Yan took out a book and placed it on the table. This book is called the Red Cloud Red Flame Scroll. Wang Pan lost to me in a duel that day and I plan to return it to the Wang clan. I am willing to swear that I won't spread it, so I hope senior brother Xie can be a middleman. Xie Zongyuan glanced at the book and stopped smiling. He nodded slightly and said, "What do you want, junior brother?" His mind was clear. Zhang Yan naturally wouldn't return the book to the Wang clan for no reason. If he wanted to return it, he would have returned it long ago. Therefore, he must have a plan. Zhang Yan said, "I want a good fire attribute cloud sand." Xie Zongyuan chuckled and said, "It's just a cloud sand. Senior brother, you don't have to worry. It won't be difficult for me to handle this matter. I'll have a reply in 2 or 3 days." He didn't ask Zhang Yan what he wanted the fire attribute cloud sand for. In his opinion, these were all minor details. Moreover, everyone had their own secrets, so he definitely wouldn't ask what he shouldn't ask. After a few more words, Xie Zongyuan bid farewell and left. Zhang Yan didn't return to his cave abode either. He poured himself a cup of wine and drank by himself, but he was thinking about Lu Tao. Lu Tao coming here today shouldn't have been a spur-of-the-moment idea. He must have planned this a long time ago. However, the people he wanted to rope in were all useful for entering the Devil's Cave. His friend had a treasure boat, Xie Zongyuan had wealth and connections, and his own cultivation level wasn't high. In the eyes of others, he didn't have much wealth, so why did he seem to care so much about whether he could go or not? However, he could also see that although this person was scheming, he didn't have any evil intentions. It was just that he couldn't let his guard down. After all, this trip to the Devil's Cave was very risky, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he had a slim chance of survival. He also needed to make sufficient preparations so that he wouldn't be caught off guard. He thought to himself, senior brother Zhou has been in the sect for more than 200 years, so he must know some things about the Devil's Cave. Why don't I go and ask him tomorrow? After making up his mind, he got up and returned to his cave abode to meditate. The next day, when the sky was just beginning to turn white, he took a bath and changed his clothes. Then, he boarded a flying boat and went to Danding Courtyard to see Zhou Chengju. He told him about his plan to go to the Devil's Cave. What? You want to go to the Seaside Devil's Cave to cultivate? After hearing this news, Zhou Chengju frowned, as if he had something difficult to do. He stood up and paced back and forth in the pavilion. Then, he stood still and turned his head to say, Junior brother, let me ask you. That day, the cloud sand that Yan Gongzhen bestowed upon you belonged to what? Yan Gongzhen was Zhenren Yan's real name. Zhang Yan had never heard of it, but he knew who he was talking about. He immediately answered, it's a gold cloud sand. Zhou Chengju sneered and said, I knew he was a very narrow-minded person. You've offended his disciple, so how could he be so kind? He looked at Zhang Yan again and said, Junior brother, don't blame me for knowing his intentions but not telling you. I have other plans, so I'm not afraid of him playing tricks on you. But if you go to the Seaside Devil's Cave now, it'll be a little troublesome. Zhang Yan said sincerely, Senior brother naturally won't harm me. What kind of trouble is it? Yes. Zhou Chengju nodded and said, now I won't hide it from you. When the senior left, he passed on a 5-direction 5-element Taishian true light. This is not a cultivation technique, but a technique left behind by the Taishian sect 10,000 years ago. It is said to be very powerful, and he wanted me to give it to the person with great luck. Thus, in the past 200 years, I haven't looked through it. Pausing, he sighed again. It wasn't until you entered the Danding Pavilion that I took it out and flipped through it. I found that there was a key step. You need to find the 5-element cloud sand before the mystic light realm and form a Xian seed. I originally wanted you to cultivate in peace and then slowly find it and give it to you. That day, when Yan Gongzhen gave you the cloud sand, I was happy to see it happen. Hearing this, Zhang Yan couldn't help but understand. His talent was obviously not high, and he had never revealed that he was cultivating the Tai Golden Book. He didn't know why Zhou Chengju always had so much confidence in him. Now, it seemed that not only did he believe in the judgment of the senior, but he also had this technique, so he was very confident. It's just that man proposes, God disposes. I didn't think that you were planning to go cultivate in the demonic cave. Right now, I only have 3 cloud sand on me. Zhou Chengju raised his hand and took out 3 brocade boxes from his sleeve. He placed them on the table and opened them. He took out 3 cloud sand each. He pointed at one of them. It was a dark green cloud sand and said, this is the wood cloud sand. I obtained it by chance in the herb garden 50 years ago. Its quality is very good. He then pointed at the other one and said, this is the metal cloud sand. I obtained it recently, but compared to the one Yan Gongzhen gave you, it's probably much worse. Don't mention it. Then he reached out and picked up the last one. He said, this is the earth cloud sand. I bought it recently, but the quality is much worse. It's a bit ugly. The amount of earth cloud sand in this world was the highest. Even in the mortal world, there was a lot of it. Unfortunately, the quality of earth cloud sand was the hardest to obtain. Zhou Chengju, as the monastery head of the Danding Pavilion, couldn't find it in such a short period of time. Zhang Yan smiled and said, everything is difficult in this world. Having it is better than not having it. Senior apprentice brother, you don't need to be so demanding. Zhou Chengju nodded slightly and then sighed. But I'm still missing 2. One is the water cloud sand and the other is the fire cloud sand. Zhang Yan thought for a moment and said, I have a way to find the fire cloud sand. But I don't know where to find the fire cloud sand. Hearing this, Zhou Chengju suddenly became spirited. He asked, oh, you can find the fire cloud sand. How confident are you? Zhang Yan thought for a moment and said, 80 to 90%. Good, good, good. Zhou Chengju said the word, good, 3 times. His eyes flashed. Do you still remember the clear nether lake I told you about last time? Of course I remember. But that time, I had already reached Clear Nether Mountain. Because I encountered a demon, I was forcefully brought back by Zhuang Bufan. Zhou Chengju said in a low voice, then you need to go again. 1,000 feet below the Clear Nether Lake, there is that cloud sand. Chapter 79. East Hua Continent, Zhaoyu Mountain. This rugged and strange mountain rose into the clouds, looking like a pillar that held up the sky. In East Hua Continent, it was known as Little Buzhou. The Zhaoyu Heavenly Lake was located at the top of this mountain. At night, the silver stars were all reflected in it, creating a spectacular scene. Because the lake was so deep, there were rumors that it led to the 9 underworlds, so some people described it as connecting the Milky Way at the top and the netherworld at the bottom. This time, Zhang Yan passed through Little Wave Mountain without any wind or waves and arrived here smoothly. This was the territory of the 3 great demons, Gui Zongyao. Standing on a high place, one could see the surrounding scenery. This demon lord liked peace, so there were rarely any cultivators here. For safety's sake, Zhang Yan summoned Luo Shao to keep him by his side as they continued to climb up the mountain. After flying for a day and a night, around the middle of the 2nd day, the two finally reached the mountain peak. At this time, a blue lake with a circumference of thousands of miles appeared in front of them. The surface of the lake was tranquil without any ripples, clear as if it had been washed, and it was like a flat mirror. It was difficult for birds to pass through here, and clear air surrounded the lake. Moreover, the clouds in the surroundings surged like the sea, causing it to seem vast, and extraordinary. Zhang Yan just stood there and looked around, and he found that this place was full of spirit qi, not inferior to his spirit page island at all. The sea of clouds surged around him, and he had the illusion that he could touch the sky if he reached out and touched it, making him want to open his chest and embrace this part of the world. Excited, he couldn't help but chant with his hands behind his back, the sky makes the clouds, the air swallows the celestial house, the wind blows, the gate of heaven opens. Hearing this, Luo Shao covered her mouth and chuckled. Master is so bold. You must have a plan to find the cloud sand. However, Zhang Yan shook his head. If this Zhaoyu Heavenly Lake was only 100 miles in circumference, then it would be easy, but this place was boundless. Zhou Chengju only said that the water attribute cloud sand was 100 feet under the water, and when he asked for details, he didn't say anything. Who knew where it was? In that case, he could only rely on himself to slowly search for it. Thinking about it, this cheap senior brother would not casually fool him. However, since this was Gui Zongyao's territory, they didn't dare to casually fly over, lest they startled this great demon. After discussing with Luo Shao for a while, the two of them decided to split up and search. Since they had sworn a blood oath, they didn't have to worry about not being able to find each other. Once in the water, Luo Shao revealed his true form. He transformed into a giant python that was 30 feet long and moved along the shore towards the west. As soon as Zhang Yan entered the water, he used the small wave splitting technique from the Billowing Cloud's secret manual. His speed in the water wasn't slow. He slowly dived down to a depth of 1,000 feet. There were all kinds of huge strange fish swimming back and forth. The lake water was cold to the bone, but with his cultivation, he could still withstand it. He searched all the way to the east. After about 3 to 5 days, he suddenly had a feeling. For some reason, he felt that the thing he was looking for was nearby. After a careful search, he found a bright blue patch on a mountain wall close to the shore. When he looked again, his eyes couldn't help but show joy. It turned out that this place was actually a blue broad wave sand vein. It was like a ribbon winding through the crevices of the mountain rocks. There was a lot of cloud sand in it, but it was as translucent and glossy as crystal. It was clearly of high quality. He looked back and forth a few times, and finally his gaze fell on one of the cloud sand. This cloud sand wasn't large, but it was full of spirituality. It was bright and full, almost giving him the illusion that it was alive. Compared to it, the others of its kind seemed to be common things of the lower realm. He didn't expect to find it so easily. Zhang Yan was happy. He looked left and right, and after confirming that there was no danger, he walked forward and carefully picked up the cloud sand. He wasn't in a hurry to put it away. Instead, he paused to see if there was any movement in the surroundings. After a long time, he didn't find anything strange. Only then did he let out a light sigh of relief and put it into his sleeve. When he was about to leave, suddenly, countless tides surged from all around him, wrapping around him and pulling him into the depths of the heavenly lake. Zhang Yan was shocked. He was about to move, but he felt that this power couldn't be resisted at all. Then, his vision darkened, and he suddenly felt dizzy. After an unknown amount of time, when he opened his eyes again, he found himself in a cave of white jade. Outside the void window, there was a misty haze, and the surroundings were inlaid with pearls, precious shells, and all kinds of colored stones. It looked colorful and beautiful. He sat on a jade chair, and opposite him was a jade bed. On the bed, sat Daoren in a feathered robe and a star crown. This person had white hair and a youthful face. His face was like the full moon, and he held a horsetail whisk. Seeing that Zhang Yan had woken up, he looked at him warmly and asked, "Looking at your attire, are you a disciple of the Yutzang sect?" Zhang Yan tidied his robe, stood up, and bowed, "Yes, I am." "How should I address senior?" The old Taoist chuckled and said, "I am Gui Zongyao." Gui Zongyao. One of the three pools of monster monarchs. Master of the Zhaoyu Heavenly Lake. A great monster that cultivated for thousands of years. He didn't think that this person didn't have a trace of monster qi, and instead, looked like a cultivator that achieved the Tao. Zhang Yan was shocked, but his expression didn't show any panic. He cupped his hands and said, "Yuan Wan is House Master Gui. Junior is Zhang Yan of the Yutzang sect. It is an honor to meet senior." Gui Zongyao stared at Zhang Yan. "Let me ask you, was it you who took the water cloud sand outside my sect?" Zhang Yan did not hesitate and answered truthfully, "That's right, it was this junior who took it." In front of a great monster like this, there was no point in hiding his cultivation, so he might as well be honest. But after hearing this, Gui Zongyao wasn't angry, instead, he was overjoyed. "You found your fortune, you found your fortune." Zhang Yan was surprised, but then his heart skipped a beat as if he had a clue. Gui Zongyao smiled, "Fellow Taoist, don't be confused. The water cloud sand you took was left behind 150 years ago by a master who passed by. He once said that if someone came to take it after 150 years, that person would be my benefactor. I have been waiting for you in my dwelling for many years, and now you are finally here." Zhang Yan's eyes flickered, wondering if this was the reason why Zhou Chengju asked him to come to the Zhaoyu Heavenly Lake. It must be, or else Zhou Chengju wouldn't let him come to this monster lord's territory to take something. This meant that the master Gui Zongyao mentioned was Daoren, the one who guided him to the Qinsang school. While he was thinking, Gui Zongyao stared at him for a long time, then sighed and shook his head. "I didn't expect you to be the one who killed me." Zhang Yan was shocked, but seeing Gui Zongyao's expression, he didn't think he was joking, so he said cautiously, "Junior's cultivation level is low. Even if I cultivate for another 100 years, I won't be your opponent." Gui Zongyao laughed, "Ha, don't be afraid, I have my reasons for saying this. Ever since I gained consciousness, I have cultivated for more than 2,000 years, and lived for a total of 3,649 years. But because of my natural limitations, my cultivation level hasn't improved in the past few hundred years. That day, when that master passed by, I asked him how long I have left to live, and he told me that the day my lifespan ends will be 3,650 years old. At that time, my 1,000 years of hard work will turn into a pile of bones." When he finished, he sighed and sighed. When Zhang Yan heard this, he also felt a little sad. He was now a Ming Qi cultivator, and his lifespan was about 300 years. Without any miraculous encounters, his lifespan wouldn't increase until he reached the Golden Dan realm. Even if he reached the Yuanying realm, he would only have a lifespan of 1,000 years. It sounded long, but to cultivators who often went into isolation for hundreds of years, it was actually very short. Perhaps, only when he reached the immortal realm and became the legendary De Luo Jin Xian, would he be able to live for eternity. Gui Zongyao continued, I asked that master if there was a way to prolong my lifespan. He said that my foundation was not strong enough and that there was no hope for me in this life unless I could find a person with great luck to help me resolve my problems when my lifespan was about to end, so that I could reincarnate and cultivate again. There was still a chance for me to achieve the Tao. I asked him where to find such a person, and he threw this piece of cloud sand to me. He said that when this piece of cloud sand is picked up by someone, that person will arrive. Zhang Yan nodded slowly. Actually, after he embarked on this path, he understood that reincarnation wasn't an easy path. If one didn't have a special Tao artifact or a supreme divine ability to protect them, they would lose all their memories of their previous lives after reincarnation. However, this was still better than a cultivator reaching the end of their lifespan and dying. Gui Zongyao smiled at Zhang Yan and said, Friend, there is still half a year before my death. It is not the last moment yet, why don't you stay here and help me when the time comes? Zhang Yan thought about it seriously, then slowly shook his head. Gui Zongyao was not annoyed by his rejection. Instead, he tried to persuade him, I have been cultivating for thousands of years and have many treasures. What do you think about my residence? After I die, I'll give it to you. I can also give you the body that I shed after I die. I even know a few immortal abodes that no one knows about, and I can guide you there. What do you think? Again, Zhang Yan shook his head. Gui Zongyao was surprised, could it be that you think that I am a demon and because of my sectarian bias, you are not willing to help me, Daoren? Zhang Yan thought for a while and decided to tell the truth, Senior, you have misunderstood me. It is not that I am not willing to help you, but in a few months, the Yutsang sect will gather our disciples to wipe out the 3 pools of demonic cultivators. Before that, I have to go to the Eye of the Sea to increase my cultivation level, so I cannot stay here. He was not afraid that Gui Zongyao would find out about this. The 3 pools and the Yutsang sect had been fighting for so many years, they naturally had ways to know about the movements of the Yutsang sect. In the past, the Yutsang sect was wary of the Shui kingdom, so they did not go all out. But now that they have made up their minds, wiping out the 3 pools in half a year was not a joke. As expected, after hearing this news, Gui Zongyao's expression was the same as usual. He stroked his beard and pondered for a while, then said, I have heard of the Eye of the Sea, but I have never been there. However, I heard that this place is extremely dangerous. If you are not careful, you will be buried here. Since you want to go, I will give you something to help you. With a flick of his horsetail whisk, a gray talisman flew into Zhang Yan's arms. This is the pure Qi shield. After I went through the trial, I made it with the broken shells on my body. It can block out disasters and divine arts. Today, I will give it to you. He smiled and said, I know that the Yutsang sect's merit courtyard has a bounty on my head. When the 3 pools are besieged, come back here and kill me. I will give it to you. Chapter 80. After receiving Xie Zongyuan's invitation, everyone boarded his dragon-tooth flying ship. This flying ship was worthy of being used by Xian Light Realm cultivators. Its speed was not inferior to flying swords. In less than a day, a palace with green tiles and vermilion pillars appeared in the distance. From afar, there was an auspicious aura rising from the roof of the palace and connected with the auspicious clouds in the sky. A ray of light broke through the clouds and sprinkled down, illuminating the 3 jade steps in front of the palace like frozen water clouds, sparkling and translucent. The green smoke in front of the copper incense burner was also illusory and blurred. Xie Zongyuan exclaimed, "Ah, the spiritual aura is soaring to the sky. This Taoist Peng's cultivation is very high. When he uses his Xian technique, he can actually sense the heavens and the clouds accompany him. I'm afraid that our Qinsang school will soon change its name to the 10 Great Taoist Masters." Zhao Zhen snorted and interrupted, "How can it be so simple? It seems like a step, but the difference is like heaven and earth. My granduncle once said that if Taoist Peng can cross this barrier within 100 years, then it's fine. If he can't, then he probably won't have any hope in this life." Although Xie Zongyuan didn't agree, he didn't dare to say more before they were about to enter the Guardian Palace. He didn't want Taoist Peng to hear him and cause more trouble. Zhao Zhen thought his words were sharp and hit the nail on the head, so he couldn't help but feel proud. Zhang Yan found it funny. Every time someone brought up a topic, Zhao Zhen would always come up to oppose them. The more he opposed, the more his fighting spirit rose. His words were also somewhat twisted, which was really annoying. If it wasn't for the fact that they needed to rely on this person to lead the way, they would have been kicked out long ago. Seeing the flying ship arrive, a beautiful Taoist nun with a straight face came up to greet them. She cupped her hands and said, "Senior brothers, are you also here to cultivate in the demon cave?" Lu Tao and Zhang Yan looked at each other. Lu Tao asked curiously, "Other than us, could it be that someone else has come here?" The Taoist nun smiled and said, "Senior brother is right. 5 days ago, Taoist Master Yan's disciple, Senior Brother Fang Zhen, came here and said that he wanted to take you into the demon cave to cultivate. 3 days ago, several senior brothers from the Yunlang Han clan also came here. Including you, there are more than 20 people. The Han family of Yunlang?" Even Xie Zongyuan was slightly moved. The Han clan of Yunlang was one of the 5 great families, and it was an aristocratic family among the aristocratic families of Qinsang School. It seemed that the disciples of such a family rarely came into contact with the disciples of their own sections. He had not expected that they would come to the Devil's Cave to cultivate this time. It seemed that they wanted to attack the 3 pools to increase their cultivation as soon as possible. The Taoist nun continued, "The Seasai Gate opens on the 1st day of the month and opens on the 15th. I'm afraid you'll have to wait for a few more days. How should I address you? I can go in and clean the house and prepare the vegetarian meal." Xie Zongyuan was just about to answer when Zhao Zhen suddenly sneered, "There's no need to say the name, I'm afraid I'll end up eating my tongue tonight." The Taoist nun was startled when she heard this. Her face blushed and her eyes were filled with embarrassment. She didn't say a word as she turned around and walked inside. Xie Zongyuan shook his head and said, "I didn't expect Fang Zhen and the others to also come." Zhang Yan's eyes flickered and he said, "It's not strange. Fang Zhen is also at the 3rd layer of clear qi. They must know that the sect is about to attack the 3 pools, so they also came here to cultivate. Moreover, everyone knows that spiritual masters Zhu and Yan are very close friends. Zhuangbu Fan is also spiritual master Zhu's disciple. He has been suppressing the Devil's Cave for 16 years and not a single demon has escaped, so he should be very familiar with the situation inside." Suppressing? Zhao Zhen's face was full of disdain when he heard this. He curled his lips and said, "They're just using this as an excuse to openly cultivate their supernatural power. If it wasn't for the Guardian Palace's great formation, the demon inside would have escaped long ago. Why would they need him to suppress it? It doesn't matter if he's missing or not." Xie Zongyuan coughed and glanced at Long Tao. The latter immediately understood and said, "This is my first time coming to the Guardian Palace. I wonder what kind of scenery there is. Why don't Brother Zhao take me around for a tour?" He didn't wait for Zhao Zhen's reply and dragged him away. Cheng'an didn't make a sound along the way. After hesitating for a moment, he also followed Long Tao. Xie Zongyuan called Zhang Yan to a secluded corner and said, "We're not familiar with the path under the eye of the sea. The only one we can count on is Zhao Zhen. However, this person likes to talk big and is impetuous. I really don't know if he can shoulder this responsibility." Seeing that Xie Zongyuan was also angry, Zhang Yan smiled and said, "Don't doubt the people you use, don't use the people you doubt. Moreover, this person's words are not without purpose. He's just sharp-tongued. Senior brother can just treat it as a joke." Xie Zongyuan nodded and said, "What I'm worried about now is that Fang Zhen and the others know that we're going to the Devil's Cave. They might try to sabotage us." Zhang Yan understood the meaning behind his words and thought for a moment before saying in a low voice, "We have to be on our guard." Right at this moment, the Taoist nun who had left earlier turned back. However, she was expressionless at this moment. "Senior brothers, I've already checked and the guest rooms are all full. The Guardian Palace is also filled with female cultivators, so it's not convenient for us to receive guests. All of you are cultivators who eat and drink qi, so I presume you won't mind sleeping outside for a night, right?" Xie Zongyuan frowned. He didn't really care about where he stayed. However, Fang Zhen and the others were clearly staying in the hall while they stayed outside. If they met another day, wouldn't they be ridiculed by others and tarnish the Xie clan's reputation? Zhang Yan felt that this was also a good idea. It would prevent them from meeting Fang Zhen and the others. Who knew what kind of trouble might occur? At this moment, he heard someone call out in pleasant surprise from behind, "Senior brother Zhang." Zhang Yan couldn't help turning around and saw Qin Nan standing not far away. Her pretty face was flushed and she wore a Taoist robe similar to the Taoist nuns. He couldn't help but ask in surprise, "Junior sister Qin, are you cultivating here?" Qin Nan's face was full of joy as she replied, "Yes." She thought for a moment, then turned to the Taoist nun and said, "These senior brothers are guests from afar. Since the guest rooms are all full, prepare a side hall for them to rest in." The Taoist nun lowered her head and respectfully replied, "Yes, martial aunt." Xie Zongyuan chuckled and said, "Junior brother, since you've met an old friend, you must have a lot to talk about. I'll go take a walk elsewhere." With a wave of his sleeve, he walked away in a carefree manner. Zhang Yan smiled and said, "How do I address junior sister and immortal Peng?" Qin Nan was a little embarrassed and said, "I was originally senior brother Chen's disciple in name. Later, when the patriarch saw me, he took me in as his last disciple." Zhang Yan carefully looked at Qin Nan and sighed, "Junior sister is really lucky." The two of them had only been separated for about half a month, but he didn't expect Qin Nan to already be at the peak of the first tier of the clear qi realm. Moreover, it seemed that she would soon break through to the second tier. This speed of cultivation was really incredible. Qin Nan stared at Zhang Yan with her eyes wide open and said, "Senior brother, you also came to the Devil's Cave to cultivate?" Zhang Yan replied, "Yes, junior sister, have you been there before?" Qin Nan nodded vigorously, "Yes, I've been cultivating there every day for the past few days." Zhang Yan suddenly understood. No wonder Qin Nan's cultivation advanced by leaps and bounds. So this was the reason. Thinking of this, he was moved and asked, "Since junior sister has been here before, do you know the path under the eye of the sea?" Qin Nan thought for a moment, and after a moment, her beautiful eyes lit up and she said, "Senior brother, please wait a moment." She turned and left. After about the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, she rushed back and handed over a 1-foot square silk map with both hands. He saw that it was filled with densely packed and indistinguishable red lines. "This is the map I saw in Master's study. I've made a copy, but I don't know if it's useful. Senior brother, you might as well take it." Chapter 81. "Thank you, junior sister." Zhang Yan took the map, glanced at it briefly, and then folded it and put it in his sleeve. With this map, he would not be led by the nose by Zhao Zhen. But that was all. The places that Immortal Peng could go might not be the places that he could go. Therefore, the most important function of the map was to have a reference so that he would not get lost. Qin Nan blushed and said, "Senior brother is too polite. I haven't thanked senior brother for helping me last time." At this point, she exclaimed in a low voice, "Aya, I still have to return that flying boat to senior brother." She reached out to take the flying boat from her waist pouch. But Zhang Yan raised his hand to stop her and said with a smile, "Leave the flying boat with me. I don't need it now. It will be much more convenient for you to visit my Spirit Page Island in the future." Qi Nan thought for a moment and nodded. They talked for a long time. When it was almost 7 o'clock and the sky was getting dark, Qi Nan personally led the way and brought Zhang Yan to the East Side Hall. The layout of Shouming Palace was simple. The main hall was arranged according to the north-south vertical axis, and the side halls were located on both sides. The terrain was low in the south and high in the north. The tallest building in the whole hall was the Flying Crane Building, which was the center of the island's restriction formation. The Eye of the Sea was under the Flying Crane Building. It was this building that suppressed the Devil's Cave and prevented the devil from coming to the outside world. Qi Nan walked Zhang Yan to the door of the hall and then left. She didn't need to remind the deacon priestess in the hall to offend the guest of the patriarch's favorite disciple. She hurried to greet him. When Zhang Yan was about to step into the hall, he noticed a person passing by in a hurry. He stopped and shouted, "Senior brother Feng, how are you?" It was Feng Ming. Since he lost the sword competition on Yingluo Island and received Elder Sun's warning, he had been avoiding Zhang Yan. Even in front of the Little Wave Mountain, he tried his best to avoid him. He didn't expect to meet Zhang Yan this time. After a moment of surprise, he cupped his hands in front of his chest and said, "Senior brother Zhang." Zhang Yan's seniority in the sect was one generation higher than his, but in terms of seniority, Zhang Yan was after him, so it was appropriate for them to call each other brother outside. Zhang Yan glanced left and right and saw that Feng Ming was walking in the direction of the West Hall. Moreover, his footsteps were hurried. If he wasn't going to see Fang Zhen, then he had something important to attend to. Zhang Yan's eyes narrowed as a plan formed in his mind. He stepped forward and said, "This devil's lair is extremely dangerous. Senior brother Feng is an elite of the sect, so you must be careful." Feng Ming said perfunctorily, "Yes, yes." With senior martial brother Feng here, there's no problem. Zhang Yan dragged Feng Ming to talk about all sorts of things. Every time the latter wanted to say goodbye, he would be interrupted. He wanted to fling his sleeves and leave, but Zhang Yan was smiling and talking, so he couldn't bring himself to do so. At this moment, Zhang Yan caught a glimpse of a figure from the corner of his eye. He remained calm and collected, raising his voice slightly, "Today I had a good talk with senior brother. Let's talk again some other day." Feng Ming was baffled, wondering how he could have such a good relationship with senior martial brother. However, he could only politely say, Of course, of course." Zhang Yan smiled faintly and cupped his hands together in farewell. Feng Ming shook his head and also turned to leave. However, he hadn't taken more than a few steps when a cold voice came from behind him, "Junior martial brother Feng, you and senior martial brother Zhang are quite close." Feng Ming quivered and turned around to see Fang Zhen standing there. He couldn't help being shocked and hurriedly said, "It was just a chance encounter on the road. Senior martial brother, please don't misunderstand." "Oh, is that so?" Fang Zhen smiled faintly as he stepped forward and lightly patted Feng Ming's shoulder, saying, "Junior martial brother Feng is worrying too much. Zhang Yan and the others don't have long to live, so why should we care about a group of people who are about to die?" Feng Ming was startled, asking, "What does senior martial brother mean?" Fang Zhen sneered, "Do you really think the devil's lair is so easy to enter? Xie Zongyuan and the others only know some fragmented news, and some of it was even deliberately spread by my people." Feng Ming suddenly raised his head and looked at Fang Zhen in shock. Fang Zhen snickered and said, "How can it be easy to deal with demons? Putting aside the Yin demons and walking demons, there are also many true demons. If we encounter them, killing us light aura cultivators is as easy as flipping our hands. Back when senior martial brother Zhuang was cultivating in the Devil's Lair, there were a few places with restrictions that we could cultivate in peace. However, Xie Zongyuan and the others didn't know about this. Junior Martial Brother Feng, as long as you follow me well and successfully enter the Mystic Light Realm, then show off your skills in the Battle of the Three Pools and obtain a few more merit points, there will definitely be a place for you when I open a sect in the future. Feng Ming sucked in a cold breath and didn't dare to say anything else. He could only agree. Feng Zhen nodded in satisfaction and then said in a low voice, "This time, I brought the 5-fire divine weapon ring. Even if Zhang Yan, Xie Zongyuan, and the others are really lucky and aren't targeted by the demons, I still need to resolve the grudges between us." Before this trip, Taoist Master Yan had called him over and carefully warned him, saying that if there was a chance, he could get rid of Zhang Yan, who was a hindrance, so that he wouldn't be pushed out by the Meng clan and Sun clan in the future. However, he reminded him that he had to do it secretly. For this reason, he even gave him the 5-fire divine weapon ring that he had already taken away. Feng Ming's heart shook. Fighting against one's own brother. This senior martial brother Feng was really bold. Just as he was about to persuade him, he swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth when he met the other's eyes that were filled with hatred. After hesitating for a moment, his lips moved and he said, "I'm afraid this is not a good idea. Han Ji, a disciple of the Han clan, is also on this trip. I'm afraid there will be many variables. If it is leaked," Feng Zhen waved his hand and didn't seem to care. "You don't need to worry about this person, and you don't need to be scared by the name of the Han clan. In my opinion, this person will most likely die here. If he is a hindrance, then kill him as well." Feng Ming said in surprise, "Senior martial brother, he is a member of the Han clan. How could the disciples of the 5 families be killed so easily?" Even if Feng Zhen was a disciple of Jinren Yan, was he really not afraid of the Han clan looking for trouble with him? Feng Zhen snorted and revealed a disdainful expression. Han Ji was only born of a concubine and suffered a serious injury in his mother's womb. Originally, his father didn't want him to be born, but his mother insisted, so he was born. This person has been disliked in the Han clan since he was a child. He has cultivated for 38 years and barely reached the 3rd tier of the Bright Qi realm, and he relied on the cultivation method that his mother stole. Later, his mother was beaten to death because of the leak. Considering that he is a member of the Han clan, he only lived in seclusion for 3 years. At this point, he sneered again. For the Han clan, this person can be regarded as a disgrace of the clan. This time, they let him come here because they want him to die. The more Feng Ming listened, the more surprised he became. He thought to himself, how does senior martial brother Feng know these secrets of the large clans? His heart was suddenly shaken, and a sense of unfathomable mystery welled up in his heart. Fear also appeared in his eyes. Seeing Feng Ming's expression, Feng Zhen knew that Feng Ming had been intimidated by him. He couldn't help but feel proud and said, "Now, in my opinion, Zhang Yan, Xie Zongyuan, and the others are just bones in a grave. In the future, in this generation of Qinsang school, it will be our world sooner or later." Chapter 82. Xie Zongyuan rolled up his sleeves and took out a cloud sand, pushing it in front of Zhang Yan. "Senior brother Zhang, I didn't disappoint you." Zhang Yan cupped his hands, "Thank you, senior brother Xie." He took the cloud sand and glanced at it before putting it away in his sleeves. His expression was incomparably natural. On the surface, it seemed as if this item was of no importance to him. He then took out 5 porcelain bottles and placed them on the table. "These are calming pills, personally refined by my master. I'll pass them to you, senior brother Xie." Xie Zongyuan's eyes lit up. "With these bottles of pills, we won't have to worry about Yin demons." Zhang Yan said, "Yin demons are easy to deal with, but vile people are hard to guard against. I'm sure this trip won't be peaceful. What does senior brother Xie think?" Xie Zongyuan naturally understood the meaning behind his words and laughed. "Xie Zongyuan, am not a soft-hearted person. Junior brother, don't worry." Both of them understood that Feng Zhen was a person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Previously, he was punished by the sect because of them, so he would definitely bear a grudge. Now that he had entered the demon's cave, he had no scruples and would most likely not stay put. After discussing for a while, Zhang Yan bid farewell to Xie Zongyuan and returned to his room. There were 6 more days until the first of the next month, when the Eye of the Sea would open. It wasn't a long time, but it wasn't short either. Zhang Yan thought about it and decided that he wasn't in a hurry to condense the seed of profound light. The serene heavy water recorded in the Lan Yun's secret book was extremely powerful, but he couldn't find the time to condense it. The spiritual energy here was abundant, unlike the Spirit Page Island, so he might as well make use of the time he had to condense a drop. After making up his mind, he sat on the praying mat and silently circulated the technique. He had already practiced this technique no less than 100 times in the broken jade, so he was familiar with it. His aura circulated freely without any sluggishness. Time passed quickly, and on the 6th day, all the cold qi in his qi orifice had been completely melted away. Looking inside, he saw a drop of water that looked like black jade floating in his chest. This water droplet was only the size of a thumb, but according to what was recorded in the Billowing Cloud's secret book, just this droplet had the strength of 1,000 caddies. But he had never tested it before, so he didn't know exactly how strong it was. Right at this moment, Zhang Yan noticed someone loitering outside the door, and he couldn't help but open his eyes and say in a low voice, "Who's there?" The deacon nun's voice came from outside, "Is senior brother Zhang here?" Today is the opening and closing of the Eye of the Sea. The few Shixiang saw that Shixiang was in seclusion a few days ago, so they did not disturb you. They said that after Shixiang comes out, they will meet at the Flying Crane Tower. I know. You can go now. Zhang Yan tidied himself up and left the side hall. It was inconvenient to fly in the nameless palace, so he walked up the stone steps and arrived at the Soaring Crane Tower in about 15 minutes. After the deacon nun verified his identity, she let him in. After entering the tower, he found that there was a cave about 10 meters long in the middle of the hall, and the surging seawater kept surging in it, making rumbling sounds. The surroundings were surrounded by a layer of white jade, and it looked like a well fence. This was the Eye of the Sea, which was similar to the Devil's Cave. The Devil's Cave wasn't dead, and the qi inside also surged like it was breathing. On the first day of the lunar month, it would suck in, and on the 15th day, it would spit out. So on the first day of the lunar month, as long as one followed the flow of the Eye of the Sea, they would be able to enter. On the west side of the hall, Fang Zhen, Feng Ming, and 3 other cultivators stood together. When they saw him enter, other than Feng Ming, they all looked at him with unfriendly eyes. On the east side stood a young cultivator with a pale complexion. His expression was calm, and he stood there without speaking or moving. Presumably, he was that clansman of the Han clan. There were 5 cultivators surrounding him, and they seemed to be followers. However, there wasn't even a trace of respect in their expressions. At this moment, a cry came from the corner. Zhang Yan looked over and saw that Lu Tao seemed to be talking to a sobbing female cultivator, while Xie Zongyuan stood at the side and shook his head. Zhao Zhen had his arms crossed and a cold smile on his face. Zhang Yan walked over and asked, "Senior brother Xie, what's the matter?" Seeing Zhang Yan arrive, Xie Zongyuan sighed and pointed at the female cultivator, saying, "That is Madame Chen, a disciple of the Guardian Palace. After her husband entered the Eye of the Sea a month ago, he didn't come out again. So this time, she begged everyone in the hall to take her into the Devil's Cave. For this reason, she begged so hard that she didn't kneel. Although she is a cultivator, she still has true feelings for her husband." Zhang Yan smiled. Although cultivators are cultivators, they still aren't supreme enlightened masters. They still have 7 emotions and 6 desires. Some seek fame, some seek wealth, and some seek power. This Madame Chen must be seeking love. Hearing this, Xie Zongyuan couldn't help but tease, "Then what does senior brother Zhang want?" The corner of Zhang Yan's mouth gradually turned into a smile, and he said, "Nothing else, I just want to live forever." Xie Zongyuan laughed and said, "Of course, to be free and unfettered is what I want." As soon as he finished speaking, a muffled sound of thunder suddenly rang out in the hall, and everyone's eyes unconsciously looked towards the entrance of the cave. The seawater there first gurgled out, then as if the bottom layer had been sucked out, it formed a whirlpool and slowly sank down. Someone exclaimed, "The time has come, the eye of the sea has been opened." Fang Zhen and the others reacted the fastest. Seeing that the eye of the sea had been opened, they all made hand seals, waiting for a treasure light to flash on their bodies, and all of them leaped in without any hesitation. Almost in the instant they entered, they disappeared without a trace. The Han disciple held up an incense burner and waved it in his hand. A gust of smoke enveloped him and the 5 people behind him. He took a few steps forward and also leaped into the eye of the sea, disappearing in an instant. Seeing this, Lu Tao looked at Chang'an and said, "Senior brother Cheng, we can also set off." Chang'an hurriedly took out a talisman and waved it. A light flashed, and a boat appeared in front of everyone. This boat was flat and wide, shaped like an old turtle. There were mechanism gates on both sides, and there were empty windows on the upper walls. Perhaps because of the special wood, the body of the boat emitted a strange fragrance, and it smelled refreshing. Zhao Zhen impatiently took the lead and stepped in. Seeing that everyone had left, Madame Chen's crying became louder. Zhang Yan glanced over and saw that Madame Chen had shapely eyebrows and cherry lips, and her figure seemed to be extremely weak. When she cried, she was extremely miserable, and it caused others to be unable to help but feel pity for her. However, he was thinking about another matter. He called out to Xie Zongyuan and said, "Senior brother Xie, since Madame Chen is a disciple of the Guardian Palace, she must be familiar with the path to the Devil's Cave. It will be beneficial to us, why not bring her along?" Xie Zongyuan shook his head and said, "I originally planned to do so, but the agarwood boat can only carry 5 people at most, I can't bring her along." Zhang Yan pondered for a moment and said, "This matter is simple. I have the dazzling Taoist robe given to me by the water country's Shen King, and it can avoid water, fire, and metal. Senior brother can just bring her along, I will go alone." "Oh." Xie Zongyuan was quite moved, but he hesitated for a moment and said, "It's just that this way, senior brother Zhang will have to suffer." Zhang Yan smiled and said, "Why do you say that? Senior brother and the others are just a step ahead of us." When Madame Chen heard that Zhang Yan gave up a seat, she wiped her tears and bowed, "Thank you, senior brother." Zhang Yan said lightly, "Madame Chen need not be so courteous, I think you know what I am planning." Madame Chen nodded lightly and said, "I know, senior brother, don't worry, I have been with master in the past, I have been to the Devil's Cave many times, I dare not say that I am familiar with it, but I can at least tell the way." The eye of the sea only took a short 2 hours to open the Devil's Cave, so there was no time to waste. Since the decision was made, no one said anything more. After greeting Zhang Yan, they entered the agarwood boat. Not long after, the boat turned into a yellow light and soared into the sky. With a bang, it drilled into the whirlpool and disappeared without a trace. At this time, there was no one else in the hall. Zhang Yan made a hand sign and the Taoist robe on his body flashed with a misty light, just like Fang Zhen and the others. Looking at the whirlpool that was spinning rapidly, he took a deep breath and jumped down. Chapter 83. The ocean current surged, and Zhang Yan floated along with the current for about an hour. Suddenly, a gentle light shone in front of him. This must be where the demonic cave was. If it wasn't for the fact that the direction wasn't right, he would have thought that it was the way back to the surface. When he was about to get close, the water around him suddenly sped up and wrapped around him. He felt a rumble as if a barrier had been broken, and he crashed into it along with the ocean current. The instant he entered, his body suddenly felt light, and the pressure that was originally pressing down on him disappeared. He hurriedly took a few steps to the side, avoiding the water that was rushing down. He stood in the air and looked around. There was light and wind here, and it was bright and vast. There was a large opening in the sky, and water poured in from above, sinking down. He adjusted his breathing slightly, and the rich spiritual energy almost rushed into his pores, instantly replenishing the spiritual energy that he had just consumed. Zhang Yan couldn't help but reveal a joyful expression. This was just the entrance, and the spirit qi in the demonic cave was already so dense. It was almost twice as dense as the spirit qi on the Spirit Page Island. If he went deeper, he couldn't imagine what it would be like. If he could calm down and cultivate, reaching the mystic light realm in a month wouldn't be a problem at all. He raised his head and looked into the distance, wanting to search for Xie Zongyuan and the others. However, he saw mountains and rivers in the distance. There were palaces in the mountains, and there were countless immortals riding cranes. He then heard Xie Zongyuan's voice, "Senior Marshal Brother Zhang is here." Turning around, he saw Xie Zongyuan, Lu Tao, Qing'an, Zhao Zhen, and even Madame Chen greeting him with smiles on their faces. Zhang Yan shook his head and laughed, "You're here already. Unfortunately, going too far is as bad as not going far enough." He formed a hand seal and the star sword ball suddenly leaped into the air. A misty blue brilliance shone and sword qi overflowed. With a few hissing sounds, the figures of these people twisted and disappeared. Not only that, but the scenery in the distance had changed as well. The fairyland-like scene from before had vanished without a trace in the blink of an eye, and a cavern had appeared. It was around 300 meters wide and extremely spacious, and there were milk pillars hanging upside down from the top of the cavern. Their reflections on the surface of the water below were like numerous sharp pillars. Not far to his left was a ravine with muddy water surging below. The seawater that rushed down flowed along this river and into a deep valley, forming a waterfall that splashed everywhere. It was an imposing waterfall. Zhang Yan stood in the air with a thoughtful look on his face. Those should be Huanma without a doubt. He didn't think that he would meet a demon that was even stronger than the Yin demons the moment he entered the cave. He heard that these demons could sense the desires of people and could create illusions to bewitch their prey. It seemed like it was true. Just now, when the thought of looking for these people arose in his mind, coupled with his obsession to pursue the great Tao, the devil immediately appeared. However, hearing about them was not as good as meeting them in person. The legends were a bit exaggerated. Not to mention other things, how could Zhaozhen smile at others? This was really a big joke. It was obvious that the devil could not touch the depths of people's hearts and could only infect the shallow layer that was floating outside. If one was vigilant and prepared in advance, it would not be hard to deal with them. He looked around again, but did not find any traces of Xie Zongyuan and the others. He couldn't help but frown. Xie Zongyuan valued his promise and said that he would wait for him here, but he did not see him. Did something happen to him? Or did Fang Zhen and the others make a move? He looked around again and saw that there were many caves and ravines in front of him. He did not know where they led to. If he did not have a map, it would be easy to get lost. He took out the map from his sleeve and looked at it. There were 4 black dots near the entrance. On the surface, those were caves that could be used for cultivation. Why not go to those places first? Even if he couldn't find Xie Zongyuan and the others, there was no harm in staying there temporarily so that his cultivation wouldn't be delayed. After looking at it a few more times, he put away the map and flew towards the cave closest to him. After flying for a while, a mist suddenly drifted towards them from an unknown location. Everything before them was a vast expanse of whiteness. However, cultivators like Zhang Yan were able to see through thick mist. Thus, ordinary mist was clearly not affected. Not long after, a large mirror-like square stone appeared in front of him. It seemed to support the heavens and the earth, smooth and flawless. As Zhang Yan flew closer, his own appearance and the scenery around him were clearly reflected on it. Looking at it, he found it somewhat familiar. Wasn't it similar to the bluestone screen wall on Yingluo Island? At this moment, his own image on the stone wall suddenly moved. First, his muscles became thick, his facial features hardened, and his cheeks thickened. Then, it changed again. White hair slowly grew on his head, his flesh loosened, and his body was covered with wrinkles and spots. Then, his body gradually bent and aged. Finally, his flesh fell off and maggots crawled all over his body. Finally, he turned into a pile of white bones with 2 empty eyes. This must be the legendary stone of illumination. Rumor has it that the people standing here will be illuminated and their entire lives will change. Zhang Yan stood for a while and said to himself, although it is an illusion, if I do not live forever, this is what will happen to me. I must keep it in mind and be vigilant at all times. After saying that, he was about to detour around this place and continue to fly inside when he suddenly saw a dead body lying on a stone pillar. Judging from the clothes, it was actually the Taoist robe of the Yingzang sect. Zhang Yan looked around vigilantly, then slowly floated over to the corpse. When he got close, he stretched out his hand and held up the person's chin. He raised the person's face a little and looked carefully. He discovered that it was one of the people who had come in with the Han clan disciple. He was about to investigate the cause of this person's death when he suddenly heard a voice coming from afar. He didn't know if it was a friend or foe. At this moment, it was too late to go elsewhere. Zhang Yan's eyes flashed, and he leaned to the side to hide in the depression of this strange stone. At this moment, he discovered that this corpse only had the upper body left. He didn't know where the lower body went. Moreover, it was empty of flesh and blood. Obviously, it had been sucked away. He frowned slightly. Eating flesh and blood, this was the legendary method of the walking devil. This kind of devil could already manifest its body and was in the process of changing from yin to yang. It was equivalent to a cultivator of the 2nd or 3rd tier of clear qi. Moreover, it was extremely fast and very difficult to deal with. The distant voice was getting closer and closer. He could distinguish that it was a man and a woman talking. Zhang Yan reached out and made a hand sign, using the qi restraining technique from the Billowing Cloud's secret book. A thin mist rose under his feet and mixed with the faint mist around him. The breath of a living person on his body was gradually melted into it. The distance between the two people was getting closer and closer. The man had a handsome face and wore a black Taoist robe. There was a large red blood cloud embroidered on his chest and shoulder. The contrast of black and red was extremely eye-catching. He held a red gourd in his hand. The other woman wore a white robe, but her abdomen was exposed. There was an umbilical plug made of green pearls embedded on it, but it tightly covered her bulging chest and shoulders. She also wore a white cloth skirt, and her hair was tied up in a bun. Her face was coquettish and her figure was graceful. The two of them were originally flying through the sky, but when they saw the corpse, they stopped and stood on a boulder not far away. The man reached out and pointed, and a faint shadow appeared in the air. It was fluttering, but the face seemed to be a little vague. One could faintly see that this person was exactly the same as the Qinsang school cultivator who died here. Junior sister, what do you think of my newly refined blood soul? The woman chuckled, and her eyes revealed a look of disdain. She said, Senior brother, this is also considered a blood soul. Not only is its form scattered and weak, it also doesn't have a spiritual sense. When released, it can at most fly 20 steps. Whether it can harm people or not is another question. The man laughed and said, of course it can't compare to junior sister's blood soul. But I haven't refined it for a long time. After a long time, it won't necessarily be weaker than yours. The woman sighed and said, Master is still the best. He only needed one blood soul to restrain the 3 disciples of the Qinsang school who were at the 3rd tier of the clear qi realm. Those few Qinsang school cultivators are also powerful, especially the one with the fire-breathing divine ring. It seems like he is the nemesis of our blood souls. Not only did he burn the evil soul that I painstakingly refined, but even Master's blood soul was damaged by him. I'm afraid it will take a year and a half to condense before it can be used again. At this point, the man's tone could not hide the pain in his heart. The woman sneered and said, I recognize that magic treasure. This treasure is called the 5-fire divine weapon ring. It can break through all kinds of yin objects. If Master wasn't 1,000 miles away at that time, and only a blood soul came here, how could we let him take advantage of us? Hearing this, Zhang Yan's heart trembled. Could these two be disciples of the Blood Soul sect, one of the 6 great demon sects? But, this is under the CI of Qinsang School. How did they come in? Could it be that there are other paths here? Xie Zongyuan and the others must have encountered these people and had no choice but to leave. Just how many of these Blood Soul sect disciples came here? At this time, he heard the woman say again, "For now, we can let the disciples of Qinsang School jump around. In half a month, when Master subdues that true demon and rushes over, they won't be able to escape." The man said, "Hee, I originally wanted to follow the branch of the little demon cave to search for the great demon cave. I didn't expect that this place would lead directly to the hinterland of Qinsang School. This is a pleasant surprise. We can't reveal this. In the future, it will be of great use. When we return, the elders will definitely reward us." The woman looked around and said, Senior Brother Li and the others said that they would meet here in 6 hours. Why haven't we seen them yet? Could it be that he had encountered some troublesome devil? Less words. The man laughed and said, Senior Brother Li's cultivation is profound. There is no need for us to worry. If you want to talk about troublesome demons, I'm afraid it's you, junior sister. The woman coquettishly rolled her eyes at him and said, Senior Brother is making fun of me again. They were joking here, but Zhang Yan frowned. From the words of the two people, they should be clear Qi disciples. But he didn't expect that Senior Brother Li would come, and it seemed that there was more than one person. This was troublesome. If he waited for other Blood Soul sect disciples to arrive, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to escape even if he wanted to. He came here to cultivate. The other party originally didn't know of his existence, so he didn't want to clash with this person in advance. But now, he had no choice but to act. Thinking of this, his eyes flashed with a cold light, and his killing intent gradually rose. Chapter 84. The conversation between the two Blood Soul sect cultivators had revealed a lot of information. The male cultivator's blood soul had been destroyed by Fang Zhen, but the female cultivator's strength hadn't been damaged. If they were to fight, they would have to kill the female cultivator first. Zhang Yan estimated where he and the other two were standing. Although the killing intent in his heart grew stronger, his expression became even calmer. He decided that once he attacked, even if he couldn't kill one of them, he would at least heavily injure them. Otherwise, the situation would become extremely passive. After sitting in silence for a moment, he silently turned around. A drop of gloomy heavy water drilled out from the top of his head and suddenly flew towards the male cultivator. He didn't expect this move to be successful. He only hoped to restrain the male cultivator for a moment. All of his attention was focused on the female cultivator. The male cultivator was talking happily when he suddenly caught a glimpse of a black light flying towards him from the corner of his eye. He couldn't help but be startled and subconsciously raised the gourd in his hand to block it. Bang! A tremendous force suddenly came from his arm, as if it could topple mountains and overturn seas. His chest felt stuffy and he was knocked down from the rock. Although this drop of gloomy heavy water seemed small, it was actually extremely heavy. He was clearly unprepared. Almost at the same time, a blue sword light slashed towards the female cultivator's neck. Her reaction wasn't slow either. Sensing that something was wrong, she slipped and allowed her body to fall. At that moment, a sense of foreboding suddenly rose in her heart. She saw another green light coming straight at her from the side. Its speed was so fast that she almost screamed in fear. Seeing that her head was about to be cut off, she twisted her waist in the air and rolled to the side to avoid being hit in a vital spot. However, one of her arms was cut off by the sharp edge of the divine Rui shuttle, causing blood to gush out like a fountain. The female cultivator let out a miserable groan. Enduring the pain with her remaining hand, she touched her belly and pulled out the umbilical plug. A blood-red figure flew out from her body. After pausing in the air, it rushed straight towards the place where Zhang Yan was hiding. Zhang Yan had already left his original hiding place. His figure was faintly discernible in the mist. Seeing the blood-red figure rush over, he raised his hand and recalled the star sword orb. At the same time, he split his attention and the divine Rui shuttle once again cut towards the female cultivator's neck. However, with the buffer just now, it wasn't so easy. The female cultivator's flexible body paused in the air and spun. Her skirt fluttered like a wheel, revealing her long white legs. The pointed embroidered shoes under her feet seemed to be a treasure. With a series of kicks, they actually blocked the divine Rui shuttle's attack. As for Zhang Yan, he faced the blood soul that was chasing after him. He formed a hand seal, and the sword pill circled in the air before slashing down. Unexpectedly, this strike actually pierced through the blood soul's body and did not have any effect. The blood soul continued to rush toward him. Zhang Yan's gaze froze. It was obvious that this blood soul had been refined for a long time. The blood essence was both real and illusory. It wasn't something that those demons with no consciousness could compare to. His sword pellet hadn't been imbued with any mysterious light yet, so he couldn't destroy such an object with one strike. Seeing that blood soul was getting closer and closer to him, he quickly retreated. Seeing this, the female cultivator's aura flared up. She kicked the divine Rui shuttle again and shouted, "Senior brother, let's work together to kill this person and take his essence. We'll split it in half." These few exchanges were completed in an extremely short period of time. At this time, the male cultivator finally recovered, but his face was a bit pale. Hearing the woman's call, he nodded and muttered an incantation. He shook the gourd in his hand, and a dark green ball of air suddenly sprayed out from it. It emitted a pungent smell as it rushed towards Zhang Yan. The female cultivator also urged her blood soul to charge forward in an attempt to pincer attack. A cold smile appeared on Zhang Yan's face. His retreating figure came to a halt, and a cloud-patterned vermilion brush appeared in his hand. He tossed it at Shuepa, who was charging at him, and said, "Go." As if it had sensed something, the 3 qi on the tip of the Fangming brush surged. With just one brush on the blood soul, the rich color faded a bit. Its originally erratic movements also became sluggish, and it was no longer as fast as before. The blood soul was connected to the female cultivator's soul. Now that it was suddenly injured, her face turned pale. She covered her chest and retreated a few steps. She desperately formed hand seals with her hands, trying to recall the blood soul in a panic. On the other side, the male cultivator also desperately urged the ball of air to press forward, trying to stop Zhang Yan. How could Zhang Yan let the blood soul escape so easily? With a cold snort, he ignored the dark green cloud above his head and waved the Fangming brush again. In an instant, the essence in the blood soul was wiped out, and it directly drifted into the air. The female cultivator let out a mournful cry and spat out a mouthful of blood. Her body went limp and she fell to the ground. At this time, Zhang Yan only felt an evil aura, and he couldn't help but feel dizzy. He coldly snorted, shook his sleeve, and a pill fell into his palm. He then threw it into his mouth and put it under his tongue. His mind immediately became clear. Raising his head to look at the green cloud, he raised the destiny writing brush that had returned to his hand into the air. With just a brush, a large piece of the cloud of air was missing. After a few consecutive strokes, it became fragmented and dispersed in all directions. The male cultivator's expression changed greatly. Without a word, he picked up the female cultivator and flew into the sky to escape. Zhang Yan sneered. His feet paused, and a cloud appeared. He also flew up and chased after them. Because he was carrying a person, the male cultivator's speed wasn't very fast. He quickly caught up to them and pointed his finger forward. A green light and a blue light flew out and chased after the person's back. The male cultivator hurriedly took out a piece of bone tile. With a wave of his hand, it transformed into a large shield with a green face and fangs, shielding his entire body within it. "Pa!" Ha! He didn't know where this shield came from, but it actually blocked the Divine Rui shuttle and the stellar sword pellet. The sword orb and the Divine Rui shuttle didn't stop and took turns to attack. For a time, the dense sounds were like a storm hitting the roof tiles, but they still couldn't break the bone shield. Seeing this, Zhang Yan narrowed his eyes and reached into his sleeve to touch the soul-calming inkstone. But after thinking for a moment, he gave up on this idea. If he took out the soul-calming inkstone, the male cultivator would only need to sacrifice the female cultivator to save his life. In this way, he would have one less burden, and he might really be able to let the other party escape. At this moment, he saw that the male cultivator's expression was calm. He was fighting and retreating, but he was still wandering around. He was clearly planning to buy time and wait for that senior Marshal Brotherly to arrive. He couldn't help but sneer in his heart. "Do you think I can't do anything to you?" He spread his hands, and a beast-faced saber appeared in his hand out of thin air. With a loud shout, his speed almost doubled in an instant, and he arrived in front of the male cultivator in a very short time. Then, he raised the divine weapon he obtained from Chu Chang and slashed it down at the bone shield. The male cultivator didn't expect Zhang Yan to use this move. But the beast-faced saber was coming at him fiercely, and he couldn't avoid it. He could only raise the bone shield to block it. With a "kacha" sound, the bone shield shattered on the spot. The male cultivator looked aghast. He casually threw the female cultivator away and turned to escape. The saber light flashed, and his left leg was cut off. He couldn't help but cry out in pain. His face twisted, and he couldn't help but stop. At this time, the third saber slashed at him. He didn't have time to dodge, and could only watch as the saber got closer and closer to his head. With a "poochie" sound, his whole body was split in two. Zhang Yan's saber shook, and with a turn, he crushed his origin spirit and slowly fell to the ground. After the female cultivator was thrown down from the sky, she was already half dead and couldn't move. Seeing Zhang Yan approaching her with an expressionless face, she panicked and said, "No, don't kill me. I'll agree to any condition you have." Zhang Yan didn't care. He walked closer and cut her in two at the waist. Then he waved his sleeve and casually scattered her origin spirit. With a "dang" sound, Zhang Yan heavily hit the ground with the hilt of the saber. He killed 2 people in a row, and there was not a trace of blood on the saber. He only felt a burst of satisfaction in his chest. No wonder so many cultivators like to walk the path of strength. With a divine weapon in hand, and with the protection of a superior Xian technique, there was no need to care about any magic treasures or flying swords. When facing an enemy, the saber in his hand could kill a person. It was really enjoyable. Originally, it wasn't that he didn't want to catch a person alive, but when he thought of the strange and inexplicable methods of the disciples of the devil doctrine, he didn't know whether the words he asked were true or not. If they had some method to track the soul, wouldn't that be self-defeating? It was better to just kill them with a saber. Listening to their conversation just now, it seemed like their Shizuan would arrive in half a month. This person was actually able to release a blood soul from 1,000 miles away and was able to suppress several clear chi cultivators in one breath. His strength was truly terrifying. It was unknown what realm of expert he was. Zhang Yan thought that with his current cultivation, he had no chance of winning against such an expert. It was better to find a safe place and increase his strength as soon as possible. The cultivation method recorded in the Tai Golden Book could only show its power after reaching the mystic light realm. If he could learn it as soon as possible, then he would have a fighting chance. Thinking to there, he took off the universe sleeve pouch from the 2 corpses. He didn't look at them anymore and used the evil salt to completely melt their bodies. Then, he quickly flew towards a cave that was slightly further away from here according to the map. Not long after he left, a figure with a thick blood aura flashed. It was a man with a pair of eagle eyes, thin lips, and a large nose. His nose twitched strangely, and a confused expression appeared on his face. Then, it became gloomy. Afterward, more than 10 people arrived one after another. When they saw this person, they all bowed respectfully and said, "Greetings, Senior Brother Lee." Senior Brother Lee snorted, which was a sign of agreement. His gaze moved down and saw a disciple holding a person in his hand. He asked, "Who is this person?" The cultivator said, "This is a disciple of the Chinsang school that was captured. I came here especially to hand him over to Senior Brother." Senior Brother Lee's body didn't move. A blood-colored profound light appeared from the top of his head and formed a big hand. It grabbed the person in the air and held him in front of his eyes. He said in a deep voice, "Let me ask you, how many people came to this demon cave? What are their names? Are there any good people?" If Zhang Yan was here, he would be able to recognize that the person who was captured was Zhao Zhen. Facing Senior Brother Lee's questioning, he smiled in disdain and said, "Look at your dead body. It's obvious that you cultivated the blood yuan art and made yourself neither human nor demon. Do you think you are qualified to interrogate your master Zhao? Let's have a good time." A trace of admiration flashed in Senior Brother Lee's eyes. He said, "Good, you have guts. I will fulfill your wish." The blood-red hand flung Zhao Zhen upwards, and then squeezed his entire body in the palm of its hand. A burst of bone-cracking sound was heard, and after a moment, the mysterious light retracted, and Zhao Zhen's entire body disappeared. At this time, whether it was his flesh and blood, or his entire body's profound qi, everything had been completely absorbed into Senior Brother Lee's body. Senior Brother Lee's gaze seemed to contain a faint pressure. All the disciples on the scene couldn't help but lower their heads, not daring to meet his eyes. After a long while, he slowly opened his mouth and said, "Master is refining the true devil. If there's anything, this disciple will do. You and the others search around. If you see any Chinsang school disciple, quickly report to me." You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.